Stand up, New York Giants fans. You're not getting a loud one from me. Obviously, from the title of this video, you guys know it's not going to be the most optimistic, live stream with you guys. But at this point in time, it's time to face reality, guys. I mean, right now, the New York Giants are 1-5. Going into the year, I think we all expected much better results. And maybe some Giants fans didn't. But even if you didn't expect better results, you had to at least go into the year thinking that they needed much better results to keep this thing going, to keep this thing moving. The Giants right now under Dave Gettleman have won 16 games. We're in the fourth year, and there's a lot of blame to go around. And I think that's the biggest problem right now with the New York Giants. And we're going to talk about that, all of that throughout this stream, and, voice some of our frustrations and, obviously get to hear some of your guys' frustrations with this football team, talk about some of the things that maybe, what the New York, I'm always and that's why I have Authentic on the channel, because I think me and him, we think alike a lot of the times when it comes to just our general outlook on the team. I'm always a guy that tries to think about solutions rather than just like destroying the team. But right now it's impossible not to destroy the team. But I think like I'm in my head all day, I'm like trying to come up with like solutions to what could make this better. And I think like since I've been on YouTube, I've always been a guy that's expressed patience. I'm going to tell you this right now, Authentic. And a lot of people are going to criticize me for, how much I backed up Dave Gettleman. I'm going to do the same thing with the next general manager because I know the situation Gettleman inherited. It was going to take time, and he screwed it up in 2018. I was encouraged in 19 when they were starting the rebuild, and I said I'm going to give him the time to carry out his plan. And I'm not a short leash guy when it comes to a GM, especially with one that's in a really bad situation. Problem is he's made the situation worse. And maybe equally bad. Regardless, it's a horrible situation. He came in and took in a bad spot, and he's leaving, and it's going to be a really bad spot. And the next GM, I'm going to be just as patient, and I'm going to let him carry out his plan. Now, the question is going to be, because Gettleman's gone. I don't care what anybody in the chat thinks. Gettleman's gone. Whether or not they go with an outside mind or they bring somebody in from the inside, and that's going to be the big question, going forward with this team. It's something that we find out at the end of the year. And, of course, Joe Judge is somebody we're going to talk about throughout this stream as well, who, of course, has been incredibly underwhelming. There's a lot of things you could talk about in terms of his decision-making, how he's handled some of the players, so on and so forth. And we'll get into all of it throughout the stream. But if you guys do not know Authentic, this link to his channel is going to be in the description below. You can check him out over there, man. But Authentic, man, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, man, thank you for having me on the show, man. I think you hit a lot of good points already with that opener there, man. With GM, I always like to say this. Like, I don't like to be thinking about what's happening too much behind the scenes, because with GMs, there's no tape on GMs. It's literally just wins and losses and bringing in players. That's the way that I can assess them from a fan perspective. So, as far as the leash goes for GMs, I also have a longer leash for a GM, just like you do. I'm patient. I want to see the results. I want to see it develop. I want to see the players develop. I want to see the team go from being a bad team to being a good team, especially how Gettleman took over in 2018. When you look at draft picks and draft stock, those are things that take a lot of time to develop. So I'm always patient. I'm also patient with quarterback play as well. But now, we're a few years into this regime right now, and I think that there's nobody out there right now that's not calling for Dave Gettleman's job. And most people are to the liking of cleaning house pretty much right now. And I'm right there with them. This staff has failed this team. They failed the organization. They failed the fan base. I mean, we're looking at a team right now, 6 weeks in, that has no chance pretty much right now of any playoff hopes. We're sitting here at the end of October, and fans got nothing to look forward to. Myself as a content creator, it makes it very difficult. I talked to you about this a little bit off air real quickly. It makes it really difficult because you can't just keep talking about the same things week after week after week. And now we got 11 more weeks of football where the Giants are pretty much going to be, on the outside looking in here. And I think the only news that we're going to be able to cover is when we're waiting for these breaking news stories to crack in the Giants community about the coaches being fired or about the GM being fired. But again, man, I appreciate you having me on and sharing the platform with your boy Authentic one time.
Oh, of course, man. I always love having you on. You've been such a loyal subscriber of mine, like you said during your live stream since day one. I think you're a great guy. Got to meet you in person and, look forward to talking more Giants with you throughout this entire process because, it's going to be a long, grueling process for New York Giants fans. And, I think we just want answers. And and we're going to get it by year's end. We may even get it before year's end in terms of what the direction of this football team is going to be. And then I'll be able to assess what I think the New York Giants should do going forward. But I'm kind of leaning that way as well right now. And maybe my opinion will change in terms of completely blowing it up. We still got 11 games to go, but so far the way this team has looked, and they've only regressed, and I recognize that some of it's bad luck. But and we're going to get to a couple of these super chats in a second, and thank you to everybody for being here. But we were talking about Ben McAdoo before we even started, and I hated Ben McAdoo, to be honest with you. The team quit on Ben McAdoo. I thought Ben McAdoo did a really bad job. But Ben McAdoo had an 11-5 year. The next year, the team went 3-13. They quit on him. They had a ton of injuries. So I'm not going to use the injury excuse with Joe Judge. Ben McAdoo had a ton of injuries, and the team folded. Of course, there were higher expectations that year. You were coming off a playoff berth. There were Super Bowl expectations by a lot of people from, with inside the media with how good that team looked the year before. But regardless, I'm not going to use injuries as an excuse to save Joe Judge's job. I see Joe Judge the way that he operated at the end of that game last week, leaving Daniel Jones in with 7 minutes to go, coming off of what many thought was a concussion the week prior. What are you doing? You're down by 30 points.
You're down by 30 points. It really made no sense.
I see his decision to start Nate Solder on the right side after the game that he had, and he got completely obliterated on the first play. Then you take Nate Solder out and you put him right back in. Like and that's his last game. There's been other instances throughout this entire year, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm a Joe Judge apologist or defender. I believed in Joe Judge when we first hired him. I think a lot of New York Giants fans believed in Joe Judge when we first hired him. And you wanted to give him a fair opportunity, and you liked a lot of the things that the guy said, just like I liked a lot of the things that Gettleman said when he first took the job. The problem is they haven't lived up to what they've said. And right now, the New York Giants are in a really, really tough spot because of it. And, we'll talk about the rebuild and everything else. Let's get to a couple of these, man. But thank you to everybody for being here. Appreciate it. Jonathan says, when does Tisch step in? Mara has been terrible. It's not going to happen. I know a lot of people talk about Mara. And listen, man, and I'll let Authentic speak about this as well. But I'm a guy who frequently says that Mara is the biggest driving force in terms of why we are where we are. Dating back to 2015, and I could go down the timeline and a lot of the things that I disagree with. But at the end of the day, he's the owner. And, he's made mistakes. We got to hope as a fan base that he learns from his mistakes and he improves as an owner, and he looks to bring in somebody here that could shake things up and hopefully improve this football team. Tisch, to me, is just a stockholder. I say that all the time. That's what Tisch is. He's not the owner of this team. He's got a piece of this team. Mara is the owner of this team. Mara is not going to step down. He bleeds blue. We may hate some of the things John Mara has done. I respect John Mara. He loves the New York Giants. He's just done a really bad job of the owner over the last 5 or 6 years. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So, he is the biggest problem, at least in my opinion. We can't change that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely something you can't change. Majority owner of the team. And the thing for me is this, like, Mara is just trying to find a guy that he can hire that can actually get the job done. I know a lot of fans want to complain about Mara's, kind of like his football direction, right? Like he's living in the past, pretty much, very old school style, very old school approach. But at the same time, I mean, it's like he's pretty much just hiring a general manager. You could look at it like you look at any other business. When you hire that general manager, you're looking at that general manager to make sure that everything goes smooth, to upgrade the quality of the business. And Joe Judge, as a head coach to me, is a guy who could come in. We've seen it, all the rhetoric he's been spewing pretty much since the offseason. It looked great. It sounded great. He put the emphasis on himself to be like, I'm going to get the job done. This is going to be a football team that the fans are going to be proud of. And at the end of the day, he doesn't get the job done. So for me with Mara, it's really just, okay, you brought in the captain of the ship. You brought in the wrong captain of the ship multiple times. It's happened back to back to back. But this is an issue I feel like that Giants fans saw this in the offseason. And GM-wise and coaching-wise, we didn't make the adjustments. You look at the offensive line coming into the 2021 season here. Everybody saw it in preseason when Andrew Thomas was having his struggles on the left side. That really scared Giants fans to go, whoa, like, what is this offensive line about? We knew that they struggled to run block. Even when Saquon Barkley was healthy for the first couple of games in 2020, we could never get the running game going. And if you look at 2021, it looks exactly the same as it did when Saquon first started in 2020. So for me, with Mara, it's all about, like, yeah, you got to hire the right guy. And you really, that's almost like winning the coin toss in overtime. You got a 50-50 chance if you're going to hire that right guy. And continuously, we've been seeing the wrong guys hired. And also, we haven't seen consistency in the approach. You talked about Ben McAdoo a little bit there. Ben McAdoo comes in. Yeah, he was the offensive coordinator for 2 years prior. But he comes in. He has a fantastic season, 11-5. We see the playoffs. We're looking at a team that's going on the up and up, Then the leash is very short. He loses 10 games. They fire him pretty much mid-season. We know Mara didn't like the benching of Eli Manning, as well as the fan base didn't like that. And I heard that Mara signed off on Eli Manning starting the first half of those games that were about to come in that season. And Eli said, I'm not doing that. If y'all want to have another guy play quarterback, I'll sit the bench. And then now Ben McAdoo gets the blame for that. Of the last couple of coaches, for me, Ben McAdoo's the guy that I kind of lean towards most when it comes to McAdoo, Shermer, and Joe Judge. And I know Joe Judge here is only into 6 games into his second season, but it's looking really pitiful. And he talked a really good game. I don't remember Ben McAdoo talking that kind of game. I really want to just see from our coach when you're losing games like this. I saw a clip going around today of Dennis Green.
On our coaching staff, the guy that you're talking about, Bielema.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just like I just want accountability from them. Stop coming out here lying to the fans. You saw Dave Gettleman not only this offseason, but in plenty off seasons, dating back to 2018 when he first got here, was all about the hog mollies, all about the hog mollies. I got a couple of notes here about the drafts. We spent big stock on the offensive line. We spent big stock on our linebackers. We spent a pretty decent amount of stock on edge rusher and defensive line. And still, those are the biggest glaring problems on this team. So for me, I think there's a trio. There's a 3-headed monster at the top of the New York Giants, and they all deserve blame. But for me, mostly, I got to put the blame on the GM and on the coach because those are the guys that were hired to get the job done, and they're not getting the job done.
Yeah. Listen, man, like I said, Mara is the reason why Gettleman's here. So that's why I think it stems from Mara, because I think that he wanted to stick with Eli, and Gettleman was probably one of the few guys that was willing to do that. And Mara's a guy that doesn't really look at from outside the organization typically when he makes hires. But at the end of the day, you're right. We can't change the owner. So the brunt of the responsibility falls on Judge and Gettleman. And Joe Judge had an equal say. Anybody's kidding themselves if they think otherwise in terms of the personnel decision since he's been here. There's no doubt about it. And I think we all agreed with that throughout the offseason that they work collaboratively. And if this thing doesn't turn around real fast, Judge is going to be without a job. We already know Gettleman's not going to be without a job. And I think the only way that Judge is going to keep his job is if the Giants hire from within. But if the Giants win 3-4 games, which it looks like is very possible, I don't see how you could sell the fan base on retaining Joe Judge. If you win 6 or 7 games, that may change. But that's why we have a lot of questions that need to be answered throughout the rest of this year, but has been a horrible start for Joe Judge. And unfortunately, if this does go the way that it's looking right now, the New York Giants are going to have 5 new head coaches since 2015. And that is a complete and utter disgrace. And we'll be on our 3rd GM. And that's what the worst organizations do. And the Giants have got to get it right. Let's read a couple of these. A template says, I feel like the only thing that was going to save our GM job would have been a positive record. That clearly isn't happening this year. Yeah, I going into the year, I thought 9 wins. The only way I could have seen Gettleman keeping his job if we say won 7 or 8 games was if Daniel Jones was like a top 10 quarterback and maybe the defense regressed. And by the way, we got to talk about the defense and we got to talk about Patrick Graham because that is a guy that a lot of people are overlooking. And last year he was touted as being and by myself included, I mean, we looked what he did with that defense going into the year. Everybody thought the defense was going to be atrocious. And what he did last year was great. Now, of course, we overlook some things, at least some of us as a fan base. They played a lot of backup quarterbacks. Yeah. And that probably helped the defense shine a little bit more than what it truly should have. But regardless, I mean, right now, the defense doesn't have a lot of injuries, Authentic. And
Blake.
If you look at this defense in terms of talent compared to the defense that James Betcher had, and we all ragged on James Betcher, rightfully so. James Betcher probably did a better job than what Patrick Graham is doing this year when you look at the talent that Graham has by comparison. But for God's sakes, Betcher had Antoine Bethea. He had Corey Ballantyne.
And shout out to my homie Antoine Bethea, man. I got a personal relationship.
I love it.
He went to Howard University, man. But he was a little older, he was definitely older in his career. And with that Betcher defense, the one thing that I did like about it is we didn't have a problem at the edge rusher. Marcus Golden had a pretty damn good year that year. I think he had 11 sacks that season. But yeah, no excuses for the defense. And I can remember even in the offseason entering 2021 here, a lot of fans were kind of scared about Patrick Graham maybe going out there and getting a head coaching job. And I'm like, man, you can't look at one season and just crown somebody. I saw I forget her name. She was on Mina something on ESPN. She was on ESPN today talking about Lamar Jackson, and she was making a comparison, saying that like, how can a guy go 2 years, have one of the highest winning percentages in the NFL, and still people are still moving the goalposts for him? When you look at a guy like Herbert, who's coming off of one season, people want to crown him as an MVP. Now Herbert is a great quarterback, but it just relates to this kind of a situation here with Patrick Graham, where it's like just one season, that's not enough. And we're not talking about a playoff berth season. We're talking about a season where the Giants won 6 games, and you brought up the thing about the backup quarterbacks. We played some awful quarterback talent, from Mitchell Trubisky, Ben Roethlisberger, who we know is going on the decline here. You had Andy Dalton, Brandon Allen, Kyle Allen, Alex Smith, Carson Wentz. This is terrible quarterbacks that we're playing against. And the one game that we, our defense showed up really well against the Seattle Seahawks when we stopped Russell Wilson, and our pass rush looked really good that game. People want to try to crown this defense as being a top 10 defense. And for me, it was one of the points that I knew we were off on as a fan base coming into 2021, that this defense was not – people wanted this to be a top 5 defense with the signing of Adoree Jackson, which now is looking like we just wasted $30 million on a cornerback who can't tackle and is not as great in coverage as people thought he would be. So, this defense has regressed. I didn't think that they would take the step back that they did. But, people are starting to get tape on Patrick Graham now. People are starting to know the kind of schemes that the Giants are running, and it just seems like we're 2 steps behind on every play. I mean, there's not anything to look forward to when it comes to this defense, and the offense is not helping them out one bit, so they're on the field a lot longer, and you're looking at a gas defense that is also being out-schemed and out-coached by other teams.
Yeah, you hit a lot of points on that, and I was as guilty as anybody. I'll be the first to say it. You make opinions. I was wrong. I thought this defense would be much better this year. I don't think anybody, like you said, thought this defense would be this poor. They gave up 28 points last week in the second quarter.
Yeah, I mean, that's
28
ridiculous.
points in the second quarter. They've given up 42 points on the last drive of the first half in the first 6 games. To do the math, authentic, you can't do worse than that. They've given up 6 touchdowns on the drive before the half in the first 6 games.
Yeah, you can't get worse than that. I mean, it's awful. And you look at that Cowboys game,
level bad.
515 yards allowed, and then you come back, you get blown out in that game. I know the score was like 40-22 or whatever, but you pretty much get blown out in that Cowboys game. And then you come home for a game against the Rams, where last time the Rams were at MetLife, it was 51-17. So if I'm on that team, I got something to prove. And you allowed them to come out and pretty much beat you in a second quarter. Thank God Sean McVay took his foot off the pedal, because that could have been a 50, maybe 60-point game. They outscored us pretty much in the second quarter. They put up all those points. They put in backups in the second half, and the Giants still get outscored 10-8. It really makes no sense. And I mean, I know a lot of fans want to try to point the finger at a certain spot. Everybody wants to place the blame on one thing, one coach, one quarterback, one running back, injuries, or one certain circumstance. This is just a bad team across the board, and the injuries aren't helping.
Yeah, listen, man, at the end of the day, and I said this like a week ago, when you're a team, we are a team that I look at the Dallas Cowboys, for example, when we were playing the Dallas Cowboys. First quarter, Dak Prescott throws a pick on the first drive. Dak Prescott fumbles the ball on the Giants' 8-yard line. I think both occurred in the first quarter, definitely both occurred in the first half.
First quarter, I remember.
Dallas Cowboys overcome that. They're like, whatever, let's just keep trucking. The Giants are such a bad team that they can't overcome mistakes. They make one mistake, the game's over. You think back to the Washington football team game last year. The New York Giants created 5 turnovers and didn't turn the ball over once, yet they only won by a field goal. And I've said it countless times again, authentic, that the Giants, since Gettleman's been here, they've won 16 games. If you take away the Washington football team, they've beaten 5 starting quarterbacks. 3 of those times it was Jameis Winston. So I
did see that tweet you put out, which is ridiculous. And just to tap onto the Cowboys turnovers, not only is this a team that can't make a mistake, and it seems it'll break the back of the team, we don't know how to capitalize on other teams' mistakes. In that first quarter against the Dallas Cowboys, we get those 2 turnovers in the red zone. You know how many points we got off of that? 0. Like, how is that possible? You got to find ways to be able to capitalize off other teams' mistakes. And also, Joe Judge is the guy who preached discipline. I know anybody can vouch for this right now. The Giants are one of the most undisciplined teams in the NFL right now. They had one game where the penalties were not a major factor. I think that was in the Saints game. But outside of that, you're looking at 8 penalties, 9 penalties, 11 penalties against Washington. It's every game. And to me, that says a lot about the culture. And I know a culture is not going to turn around in just a couple of games, 1.5 seasons, but you like to see at least your team being on the up and up when a guy comes in and that's all he's preaching is culture, 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 culture. And now we have a team that looks more undisciplined than the teams that were here previous to when Joe Judge got here.
It's been bad, man. Let's read a couple of these. Tuto, what's going on, buddy? Says,
Tuto.
Salute, my Giants paisano. Just dropped by your office and let you know we're all ready to stop all the stinky Philly fans on the way. Listen, well, then if we're going to win one game this year, and I'm sure Tuto agrees because he's always bashing the Philadelphia Eagles, if we're going to win one game this year, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss any of these, let it be the Philadelphia Eagles, or 2 games this year, I should say. Let it be the Philadelphia Eagles. But yeah, we got to beat that football team. That's our Super Bowl at this point. Let's get to Zeke, man. Zeke, man, thank you so much, man. He says drastic times call for drastic measures. Fire Gettleman before the trade deadline. Yes. Don't let him make another transaction. Fire Joe Judge, fire Jason Garrett, and fire Patrick Graham right now. Use position coaches for the rest of the year for head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. What's your take on that, Authentic?
I almost agree with everything there. I just think you might have to keep one person around to be the interim head coach just so that the players that remain in this locker room can have something going into the 2022 season, but I'm totally for it. Dave Gettleman is – I saw a content creator saying this the other day that it makes sense for us to keep Dave Gettleman past the trade deadline and to make moves for the draft before they get rid of him. And I just thought it was the most ludicrous thing I had heard. You need to get a new GM in here and let him do everything he wants to do. If he wants to get rid of the quarterback, let him do that. If he wants to use these draft picks and trade them away and do what the Rams did to build up a team off trading away draft picks, first-round draft picks if it must be, then allow him to do that. But right now, this regime that we have, it's not cutting it. They've had a good bit of time here to kind of correct things. And I think it's just so easy to see. I mean, we're just fans of the game. Like, I got other stuff going on in my life where I can't just sit down and break down tape all day like the New York Giants get to do. They're getting paid to do this job, and all of us can see it. I mean, just from talent, from development of the players, and coming into this season, I felt Dave Gettleman did a decent job in the offseason of getting what I wanted because we knew that the offense was ranked 31st last season, so we knew we had to bring out some offense here. But I think while doing that, they overlooked 2 key things, is how to upgrade that defense and this offensive line. They thought that, we were going to get these flashy Ferraris and we were going to be able to score points without building in the trenches. The Giants should have maybe went out there and got 2 offensive lines so that they had a backup offensive line to be able to – when you look at a guy like Nate Solder out here struggling, I mean completely struggling.
He's done.
And then Matt Pert is the guy who's the backup, and fans are wondering, hey, why is Matt Pert not out there? And then when you finally get Matt Pert out on the field, he looks like straight garbage. That's on the coaches. You have to be able to assess your roster to know that, hey, we have a weakness, not only at our right tackle, but we have a weakness at the guy who's backing him up. And we have another weakness at the guy that's backing him up. And now you just got injuries galore. You look at the Nick Gates injury. That happens. I know Nick Gates had experience playing guard, but that happens because we don't have depth on this offensive line. So now you got to sign a guy off the streets and Price and move your captain of your offensive line to the guard position. He ends up breaking his leg in his first game playing guard. So all of that for me is on the coaches and on the GMs of just how you develop these players. I talked to you a little bit about this off air too. Look at the players that were already here. Look at the guys like Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard, other players that have been here on this team. They have not gotten better since Joe Judge has gotten here. A good coach makes all his players better. A good coach puts his players in position to make plays. A good coach, I saw somebody say this in the chat a little earlier. They were saying that a good coach and a good quarterback can hide a lot of mistakes and a lot of blemishes on a team. And that's facts. And right now, I don't want to get to the quarterback too early, but I've been talking about the definition of a franchise quarterback now for the past week. Daniel Jones is not a franchise quarterback. He has had enough time to show people what he can do. He's capable of being a winner in this league, but he is not a franchise quarterback. So to go back to the point where you were saying they left Daniel Jones out in a game that was virtually 38-3 pretty much, and he's just coming off a concussion, and you got the guy running quarterback sneaks on 4th down, not getting it, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's really JV, and it just shows that the immaturity of these coaches on this coaching staff, and there's about like 40 of them, it's ridiculous that we can't get our players in the right position. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Daniel Jones a lot more throughout this stream, but I agree with you. But I'm going to give my opinion as to why I was so adamant about hoping that Daniel Jones could have had a good enough year where we were confident as a fan base to see a 4th year I'll talk about that throughout this stream, but I agree with you. I don't think Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback. I don't. And maybe my opinion will change, but as of now, to me, the definition of a franchise quarterback is a guy that could eat up 15 to 20% of your salary cap and still win football games. Because that's what franchise quarterbacks get on their second contract. And right now, how could I conclusively say that about Daniel Jones? How could I say that? So right now, I agree with you. Does he have potential? Maybe. But right now, there's nothing that points to the fact that that's even near a conclusive statement. But we'll talk about more of that throughout the stream. As far as Gettleman goes, I agree. I think a lot of fans right now fear that Gettleman can make some silly moves before the trade deadline. Listen, if you want to wait until week 15, week 16, make your move then, and you tell Dave, listen, you can't make any trades that could further damage our future, whatever. But if Dave Gettleman makes a trade at the trade deadline that damages our future, I'm going to be pissed off as a New York Giant fan, because right now, Dave Gettleman is clearly not going to be a part of the future of this football team. So if they fire Dave Gettleman tomorrow, I wouldn't say a word, because I know he's not a part of the future of this team, and he cannot make a move that's going to even further damage the situation for the next GM. So I'm in complete agreement there. In terms of a coaching change, I don't expect it right now. Could I see Joe Judge being fired at some point during the season? Maybe. If they were to do that, I don't think that, as crazy as it may sound, it may be Garrett. And I know you've said that, and I don't want that at all, because what I fear if they were to fire, and it's kind of why I just want Judge to carry it out throughout the rest of the year, because what I fear as a fan, and I said this in your stream a couple days ago, is if they fire Judge and Garrett steps in as an interim head coach for like 7 or 8 weeks and say he wins like 4 games and the Giants look pretty good, I fear that they could sell or try to sell Jason Garrett, being that he has ties to Mara, as being a guy that they should give a chance for a following year.
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think so, because
I don't even want that opportunity to creep into people's
I don't think
heads.
that'll happen, because if Garrett was like lights out on the offensive side of the ball and it was only the defense was a problem, I think maybe that could be a case. But just to piggyback real quickly off the part about franchise quarterback, right? There aren't many players in the history of the NFL that are drafted and people should be thinking that they are franchise quarterbacks. I mean, even Tom Brady, when he comes in the league, we're talking about the GOAT. The New England Patriots aren't thinking that that is a guy that we can build around. He can't be on a bad roster and we build around that. There's only a few quarterbacks like that right now. And to me, there's only about 2 or 3 of them of the recent past: Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. I even think a guy like Josh Allen, when he's drafted, you're not looking at him like he's a franchise quarterback. He still needs a little bit of help around him. Let's not forget, Josh Allen did not throw for 300 yards in his first 2 seasons as a Buffalo Bill. And finally, when they got Stephon Diggs, he came out the gate and had 3 straight games to start the season with 300 yards or more. So all of these quarterbacks, 95% of these quarterbacks are not franchise quarterbacks until they prove it. So to come into a league on a rookie contract and people to be expecting like Daniel Jones to be a franchise quarterback, I don't want people to get it twisted. We shouldn't be thinking a lot of these guys are franchise quarterbacks.
Franchise quarterback is tough, man.
It's tough.
I got to get to some of these super chats because I don't want to lose them. But franchise quarterback is tough. Matt Stafford is not a franchise quarterback as far as I'm concerned. And he's in a great situation with the Rams that he may win. Matt Stafford got paid a huge contract, couldn't win anything with the Detroit Lions. Matt Ryan, once he got his big contract, the Falcons went to hell. So it is tough to warrant being a franchise quarterback. For
Aaron Rodgers, I got to put him in that mix too.
Rodgers definitely a franchise quarterback, but they're few and far between. Zeke, man, thank you so much, man. He says the team is flat, uninspired. They play with little energy, effort, and passion. Different voice is needed. Zeke, I said it in my stream after the game. Last game was the first time I could conclusively say, I could have said a lot of bad things about Judge throughout this season. Last week was the first time, Authentic, that I could conclusively say the team quit on Joe Judge. I thought the defense fell asleep there at the end of that football game. And granted, you're down by 30 points. But regardless, Joe Judge talks about playing for 60 minutes. These guys did not play for 60 minutes last week. And I'll be the first to say that. They played for about 48 minutes, and then they cashed it in. That's the feeling that I got about that defense last week.
Yeah, me too. And that says a lot about the head coach when you got players that you actually have to give them a halftime speech to buy in to play in the second half to getting paid millions of dollars. Makes no sense. I never question effort of players, and that game against the Rams was the first time where I was like, wow, are they really just giving up out there? Because I've played on bad teams myself where nobody was getting paid and people weren't just giving up, because it's your reputation that's on the line as a player as well. So when you go out there and look bad, not only are you hurting your team, but you're hurting your future as far as any other teams maybe being interested in you. So, I just think that says a lot about the culture, what's going on in that locker room. You know, we talked about the team giving up on Ben McAdoo. I think that this regime, it's been worse. You know, you look at the way that they look deflated in the pressers after the game. It's just been dismal for the New York Giants. And I just got to start right at the top, man, you know, and just work my way down. Because if we're looking at a coach who's on the sidelines, the thing about Joe Judge is he's not like an offensive guru, and he's not like really a defensive guru. So it's like, what are you doing? It's almost like you need pom-poms on the sidelines, because all you're doing is just trying to hype your players up to go out there and make plays. But there's no reason to give you any credit, because you're really a special teams coach. And we saw the Rams ran a fake punt on us. Thank God for the flag. It got called back. I know Joe Judge is on the sideline screaming it, hey, fake punt, fake punt. But like, if you are instilling these things in the culture, you shouldn't even have to do that.
Good call on the fake punt. Travis, man, he says, Chris, you're doing the Knicks game tonight. Yeah, I'm going to try to do every Knicks game. But, yeah, definitely doing opening night for sure. I think the game starts at 7:30, but I'll check, and I'll probably be live about 20 minutes before the start of the scheduled tip. So, yes, I will be live tonight calling the Knicks game, Travis. Alvin, man, thank you very much. We need a new GM and coach, and a new GM should be able to run the team as he sees fit. Restructure the whole front office. Alvin, man, thank you so much, man. And, yeah, I'm at that point, too. And you know, when I talk about blowing it up, I said it on Twitter today, that's my definition of blowing it up. And you know what? I'm not even going to say fire Judge. I'm going to give the GM full autonomy to do what he wants to do. If the new GM likes Joe Judge, he wants to keep Joe Judge stays. I'm going to let the GM make every decision. That's your job as a general manager. My guess would be he'd move on from Joe Judge, but he gets that decision. And as an organization, that's what the New York Giants need to do if they're moving on from Dave Gettleman, which they're going to do. You cannot pigeonhole your general manager. And in my opinion, and I'm not defending Gettleman, he's done a bad job. But in my opinion, from the start, Mara did not do that. And that's why Gettleman even got the job to begin with. I really, in my heart, don't believe that Mara was not willing to hire a general manager that wanted to blow it up, because he said to himself, Eli Manning, I want to give him another year. I saw the fan base reacted when they benched Eli Manning for Geno Smith, and I need a general manager here that is willing to believe in Eli Manning and willing to try to give this team, even though we have no talent on the offensive line, wasn't Eli's fault. They had no talent to support Eli Manning, and any general manager with a clear head should have known that going in, that I'm not taking this job unless I could start the reset button. And I think Gettleman was willing to, even Gettleman probably knew this is probably not the best of ideas, but he was willing to suck it up and take the job knowing that they wanted to rebuild and win at the same time. And that is what I say when I blame it on Mara. And Mara needs to learn from that mistake, and he cannot force any agenda on the next upcoming general manager. If the next upcoming general manager wants to get rid of everybody, including Daniel Jones and whatever, you have to allow him to do it, and you have to allow him to build the team the way in which he sees fit.
Yeah, I agree with you on all points, but I do think you bring in a new GM, if he's thinking about keeping Joe Judge, he's not the right guy.
Good point.
You know, Joe Judge is just everything he's claimed that he was going to do, he has not done, and then you still see him after week 6 in the presser talking about, we're going to go back and look at the tape right there and all this. I really want a coach that's just going to own up and say, hey, we stunk out there. We were pitiful. We were awful. We were a disgrace to the New York Giants organization. I forget. I don't know why I'm having a loss for his name right now, from the Seattle Seahawks, who had the bit, the playoffs bit. You remember where he's like, playoffs? What's my guy's name? Jim Mora.
That was the Colts. He was on the Colts.
Oh, it was on the Colts. Yeah, my bad. But like, you know, he has another famous presser that I retweeted today, where he was just like, we were trash today. We stunk. Everyone out there was garbage. You even look at the Detroit Lions right now sitting at 0-6. Dan Campbell, in his pressers, I love what he's saying. He's taking ownership. He's calling out his quarterback. He said Jared Goff played like absolute garbage, and if we're going to win games, he's going to have to step it up, along with all the other players. Instead, Joe Judge is kind of like, you know, just being Mr. Nice Guy on the podium and whatnot. I just want honesty. I might like him a little more if he would take a little bit more accountability. But right now, bringing in a GM, I don't think you stick with Joe Judge, and I'm all for just blowing it all up.
Yeah, if they're bringing an outside GM, I'm just saying I would give him the he gets to make the decisions. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm thinking of like other head coaches, like you're saying, that Dennis Green was another one. Remember Dennis Green after the Cardinals lost, I think it was to the Packers. We had the game and we let it get away. Like, you want to see. It's a good point you bring up. But we're sick of this. We saw it with McAdoo. McAdoo said the same thing that Judge is saying in these press conferences. I'm going to go look at the tape.
Yep.
I'm gonna go
And
look at the tape.
he
I'll
said
get
a
back
lot
to you.
less. You know, he just said a lot less, which
Yeah.
I can respect that too. If you want to be a little bit guarded and you want to give off like the Bill Belichick vibes and whatnot, when a beat writer asks you a silly question, you just answer it with a silly answer. I like that too. But you know, to just kind of just keep lying to the fans and just say, yeah, we're working hard at trying to put the best product on the field every week. And you almost look like you're regressing now. You know, when you look at from the Cowboys game where we were getting blown out, you still saw fight in that team trying to battle their way and stay in that game. You know, you saw players laying it all out on the line. I mean, it left and right. That was one of the most physical games I watched all season.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper were banged up in that game. You see Daniel Jones get clocked, and then he's walking off with the concussion, you know, and just a bunch of players getting banged up. But they fought through that game. You look at that Rams game, man, halftime, it's like, I tweeted out, what are you going to say to the team? What are you going to say to a team like that after you allow 28 points in the second quarter?
They checked out, man. Keith, man, thank you so much, man. Seems like this issue is family rooted. Too many of them in the organization or family friends, no objectivity, overvaluing players religiously. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have pointed to that. I think Mara's son is from within inside the scouting department. A lot of people have pointed to that in recent days. And let me just pull this up now because I think I missed a couple of super chats, but I love the conversation. But I'm gonna pull it up on YouTube so I could I don't want to miss anybody's donations. But as far as that's a great point. A lot of people have brought up that they feel that you know, Mara's son, I think it is within inside the organization, and they need to change things up. Period. End of story. And I think the biggest problem with, and I've said it several times, I think the biggest problem with Mara is he's too safe. He plays things too close to the vest. He's too safe in terms of his decision making, and he has to change things up, and he has to think out more outside the box.
Yeah.
And Christopher says, for problem is Jones is not a good quarterback. Have to move on.
That's a
problem.
I
mean, I think all right. I'll let Authentic start with this, and I'll give my opinion on Daniel Jones. In terms of moving on.
You know, I can just piggyback more off the franchise quarterback talk, right? You know, Daniel Jones is on a bad team. Let's not forget that. Okay, this is not a good team. Offensive line wise, you're looking at one of the worst offensive lines that I've seen a product on the NFL field in a really long time. I mean, he's literally running for his life. But like I said before, Daniel Jones is not a franchise quarterback. But that does not mean that you cannot win with a guy like Daniel Jones, but you got to put the right pieces around him. We see it year in and year out. Daniel Jones is like a quarterback that's like a Ryan Tannehill. Look at Ryan Tannehill when things are going wrong. He looks awful. Ryan Tannehill was in the playoffs. They won 2 playoff games where he threw for under 100 yards. They have one of the best running backs in the NFL. People laughed at this when I talked about this in the offseason. I said one of the number one problems right now with the New York Giants is the number 2 running back. You need a running back who's not a backup. You need a running back who's a starter to pair with Saquon Barkley. Utilize Saquon Barkley like Alvin Kamara. Look at what Sean Payton does, mastermind over there with New Orleans. He uses Kamara like a third down back and slash a guy who can run between the tackles, but he's not just running them through the tackles all the time, running them through the ringer. That's not his style, and that's why Alvin Kamara has not rushed for 1,000 yards in his whole entire career, but he has a $75 million contract right now. With Saquon Barkley, they got too caught up in the touched by the hand of God and all that stuff, and you got Jason Garrett over here running offensive coordinator who's trying to turn Saquon Barkley into Ezekiel Elliott, but that's not the style of runner he is. It eerily reminds me of Reggie Bush, one of the most dynamic playmakers ever coming out of college, and they just didn't know how to use him. They felt like when you come to the NFL, you got to be a bruiser-type running back that runs between the tackles. Now, if we're going to talk about New York Giants football, the most successful New York Giants football in my career was done with 2 running backs. You know, you look at Alma Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs, three running backs. We had Derek Ward at one point as well. You know, there's always been running back depth. You could take it all the way back to Rodney Hampton and Dave Meggett. You know, Dave Meggett was doing
Don't forget about Charlie Way.
Exactly, you know, so I just it's interesting that they can't see that, you know, and now you're looking at a guy in Saquon Barkley who's always hurt. Granted, this one against the Cowboys was kind of a freak accident. He's like doesn't have his head on a swivel, and after the play turns his ankle on something. You know, it's a silly play. He's just not paying attention, you know. But outside of that, he's been getting hurt every year, and I think that's because they're trying to use him as a bruiser running back. But back to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is the kind of guy that he needs a lot of help around him. He needs more type of wide receivers that are like Sterling Shepard, that are security blankets, and then you see it against the New Orleans Saints. Daniel Jones looked like he was about to take that step and be that guy.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you get Kenny Galladay's injured, you get Sterling Shepard injured, and now imagine if Kadarius Toney is not on the field, you know, for some of these games, and then Andrew Thomas the thing with Andrew Thomas that bothers me so much is that He comes out of preseason and the Giants' new offensive line was an issue, right?
Yeah.
He was struggling in preseason. He got it together, thank God. But they should have known that when he's not on the field, how bad that offensive line looks. I know we had Nick Gates out there doing some things, but Nick Gates isn't some world-class center. Nick Gates was very serviceable, and he did his job. Tough guy. Look, he was one of the alphas, I feel like, on this team, like Carl Banks likes to talk about a lot. But let's be real. You don't got a lot of alpha guys in the trenches. When I see Randy Gregory rushing the quarterback from the Dallas Cowboys, it makes me lose my mind because he's so aggressive. He's so adamant. You can just see it on his face.
Just the Cowboys defense in general is aggressive when I watch him play. And
Yep.
they definitely have warts to that defense, but they're aggressive. And I say it all the time, man. I'm jealous of the way the Cowboys built their football team. They built it from the inside out. And that's the proper way to build a football team. They didn't bring in Zeke till they fixed the line. They didn't bring in Amari Cooper until they fixed the line because they could maximize the potential at the skill position. And while I agree with Christopher right now that Jones is nowhere near a franchise quarterback, what I fear, Authentic, is if you move on from Jones and you put another quarterback in as bad of a situation. And this is the biggest reason why I flipped out when we took Daniel Jones, more so than anything else. I did not think Daniel Jones was the type of quarterback, which is not a knock on Daniel Jones. It's like what you said earlier. It's like 95% of the quarterbacks in the league are not that type of quarterback that could go above and beyond in an atrocious situation and could succeed here with the New York Giants until they fix the deep root of the problems. And it's been the same problems we've had with this football team for 10 years. And it's why I worry about if we move on from Daniel Jones too quick and you bring in another guy and you draft another guy and you may even have to trade up to get said quarterback if it's your guy in the first round. He comes in and he's in just as bad of a situation and he's going to fail. So that's my biggest worry. Fix this team. Whether that means you want to go with a stopgap quarterback for a year or two while you fix the team, I just fix the team. You fix the offensive line, and until such time we could block and have a balanced offense. You look at the Cleveland Browns, you look at the Dallas Cowboys, you look at the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill couldn't do nothing with the Miami Dolphins. He goes over to the Titans. They've got a ground attack. They've got an offensive line. They've got weapons. He could succeed. And my take is I want to be able to maximize the ability of the players that I bring in at the quarterback position, at the running back position, at the wide receiver position. And the Giants have done it backwards. They drafted Barkley before they could maximize his potential. They drafted Daniel Jones before they could maximize his potential. They've done things backwards. Fix the line. That way, when these guys come in, you can get the most out of their abilities. That's just my take on the situation.
No, I'm right there with you, man. And to not draft any offensive line in this last 2021 draft is ridiculous, knowing how terrible this offensive line was. And we also let go of our best piece from the offensive line in Kevin Zeitler. So you knew that the offensive line was going to take a step back and that they didn't address it until 1 week before the season is just absolutely ridiculous. There's no excuse for that. I definitely agree with you about Daniel Jones moving forward, too, because, you know, if you don't really got a real franchise quarterback in this draft. I know a lot of people have been talking about Malik Willis. I haven't had a chance to really look at a lot of his play. I'm not that deep into college football. But if you don't see it's the guy that you can build around and he's a franchise quarterback, you might be better off just moving forward with Daniel Jones until you can rebuild the rest of this team, because you're now looking at a rebuild that was supposed to take 3 to 4 years, and who knows, this rebuild might take a decade now if they don't get things right quickly.
Yeah, and if you keep taking shortcuts and you hope that you hit a lottery ticket with a quarterback and you're wrong, it's just going to set it further and further back. That's just my opinion on the situation, man. Jarrett, man, thank you very much. Mara doesn't seem to take into account the landscape of the modern league when he hires, hence why this franchise is behind. I think you hit that on the head, Jarrett, man. Now, I definitely think you could have a very good football team trying to build a team, I think, in the way in which Gettleman wanted to build it. He just didn't build it right. Like, I look at the Browns, I look at the Cowboys. They're a team.
I was thinking the Browns right off the bat when you were saying
the Cowboys, the Titans, the three teams I said, they are a team that built around the offensive line, being able to establish a run and setting up the pass that way. I definitely think you could build this. There's many ways that you could build a successful football team. It's a matter of bringing in the right players to be able to build it that way. So I don't think there's one perfect answer in terms of how you should build a football team. You could build it with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, which, of course, the Ravens rely a lot on the ground game, both with Jackson and the running backs. You could build it with a quarterback like Pat Mahomes. Of course, having Andy Reid helps that dramatically. You could build it with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. You could build it with the philosophy of the Cleveland Browns, where they run the hell out of the football, but you have to be able to have the right personnel in order to do that. I have no problem a GM trying to build the team in which the philosophy in which Dave Gettleman tried to build it, he just didn't follow through.
Yeah, he really didn't. And
That's my
I
take
like
on
what
it.
you brought up about the Browns, because even with the Browns, it took them a minute because they were looking at the league and they're like, oh, we got guys like Patrick Mahomes. He's got a lot of weapons over there. This is looking like it's a passing league. I saw something on Colin Cowherd where they were talking about the 14 teams in the playoffs. 7 of them were deep diving into analytics and very creative style offenses. But you can win in a multitude of ways. You look at the Titans, they went 9-7 for like 3 or 4 years straight. They're doing it on the back of Derrick Henry and a decent offensive line at the time. This year might not be the same case. But for the Browns, it took them a while. They had to throw the ball around and see, okay, Baker Mayfield is not a franchise quarterback.
No.
Okay, so we need to bulk up on running back. They went out there, they got Kareem Hunt, and it's kind of crazy that both of them are hurt entering this week. You got 2 great running backs that both could be top 10 running backs in this league, and they're both getting hurt. So it kind of shows, like, if you're going to build a team like a Ferrari, you 1,000% need the right engine underneath the hood, and the engine is the offensive line. If you want to build it on a running team, same goes for that. You got to have guys up there that can run block. The one problem the Giants have had for 2 seasons straight, and I mean almost in every game, is the run blocking of this team has been awful. We cannot get the running game going. Even when Wayne Gallman was having some success, it was only one 100-yard game. So it's just not enough for me. And the straightforward style running back is definitely going to have more success behind an offensive line that can't block, because he's just going to take what's there. You're looking at a guy in Saquon Barkley, a lot of people saying he's dancing, but he just doesn't have holes, and that's not his style of running. He's not a guy who's just going to keep slamming his helmet into the hole every play. That's just not his style.
Yeah, I think you need a blend of both. Like you said, how you need a running back that could complement Saquon Barkley, but without the line, like you said, it's hard to have a running back the style of Saquon Barkley and for him to be successful. You put him on the Saints, he'll be successful. I promise you. With that offensive line, he'll create a lot of big plays. John, man, thank you very much. I know you as a Giants fan wanted to give Gettleman a chance, but isn't there a reason that Carolina let him go? Of course, there's a reason that Carolina let him go. There's a reason why everybody gets let go at some point, whether it be Ron Rivera as a head coach, going over to Washington, and sometimes when they go to another destination, they succeed. And do you think he would? How did you think he would do better in New York? First off, Gettleman, I was under the assumption, did a pretty good job at Carolina at the beginning. When he took over that franchise, I think they won like 5 games. He had him at 15-1 3 years into his tenure. So,
but he did find that unicorn at quarterback for that short period of time. I mean, Cam Newton comes in the league and he's unstoppable.
And he also found a lot of gems in terms of the offensive line. Later in the draft, you look at I think he found 2 Pro Bowl linemen in like the 2nd or 3rd round in drafts. So there were some good things about Gettleman. I think the reason why Gettleman ultimately got run out of town with Carolina was because of how he handled some of the players. Josh Norman, the whole situation there, that was a big deal. And I do think he came in with the reputation of being a good talent evaluator. And with the Giants, it has not worked out. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to give the next general manager, people may kill me, I'm going to give him a long leash, because that is the only way they're going to have an opportunity to fix this situation. You cannot, at least in my opinion, judge a general manager a year or even 2 years into his tenure fully and say he needs to be fired, inheriting the situation in which Gettleman inherited and inheriting the situation in which the guy that's going to replace Gettleman is going to inherit. That's just my opinion. And I'm going to give them a little bit of time before I come to a conclusion in terms of that they were failures in terms of building this football team. But I'm at that point right now with Gettleman.
Yeah, I'm definitely right there with Gettleman. I think the situation that he comes into in 2018, we do have a high draft pick. They're coming off of a playoff berth in 2016. You spend all that money, you sign Odell Beckham, and then you end up trading him. So now when we thought that the offense was headed in the right direction, and if he would have stuck to his word and just built around the hog mollies up front, you're looking at a pretty decent offense that could go out there and probably put up some points. I remember that the Giants offense in that 2016 season, we were not near the bottom of the league like we were coming out of last season. So for me, it was like, hey, just build up that offensive line. You got Sterling Shepard, you got Odell Beckham, Evan Ingram, had the drop issues back then even still, but we were still looking at him like, okay, there's still a lot of time left. You can maybe get another running back in the backfield here to be able to build this offense. But it seemed like all you had to do was get some hog mollies up front, transition from Eli Manning into the next quarterback. That defense had a lot of issues. We know they went out there and spent like damn near $200 million. I remember when they went out there and it was Olivier Vernon and like Jack Rabbit, a few others that they signed, but they did see immediate results from it. And that's the opposite. I have compared this 2021 season a lot to the 2017 season, but that's the difference, is that they spent the money and at least we got some results. It was a flash in the pan, but we got 1 year results. We were in the playoffs. Boat trip team, we're looking at it crazy when they failed.
For being fair, that they didn't have injuries on that team, but yes, it was obviously it was much better results, no doubt about it.
It was much better results, and now we're just looking at 4 straight years of horrible football underneath the Dave Gettleman tenure. So for me, it's like they all got to go. The coach got to go. The GM got to go. I'm sure the GM had a lot to do with hiring the coach. They all got to go for me now. I want to see a whole new regime come in here and try to really clean this up. Get you the right coach. Get you somebody that's experienced. I know me and you were split on Mike McCarthy. I wanted Mike McCarthy entering Joe Judge's hiring. I wanted Mike McCarthy. And the only reason why I wanted Mike McCarthy is because he proved that he could take a team and turn it around. The Green Bay Packers were like 7-9 when Mike McCarthy got there, and within 2 to 3 seasons, they were sitting in a Super Bowl. So for me, to get a guy, Joe Judge, who was pretty much a part-time wide receiver coach who then shifted to be doing some special teams work, to bring him in as a head coach, I'd never heard of Joe Judge's name until you broke the video that we had hired him. So for me, that was a backwards move.
That we interviewed him, but that didn't get a lot of views because nobody thought we would hire him. Yeah, no, I was not a big McCarthy. I'm still not a huge McCarthy guy. I think he's in a great situation with Dallas. And I think he had a great situation with Green Bay, obviously with Aaron Rodgers. But is he a decent coach? Sure. In terms of who I think the New York Giants should bring in, I'm not going to give a specific name until if they elect to replace their head coach. But I've said countless times over the last 3 or 4 weeks when people ask me the question, I want an offensive mind. I want an offensive-minded head coach because I think that's where the league is. I think you need an aggressive, offensive-minded head coach in today's NFL. And then that's my one request. And we'll see who some of the candidates are. There's a lot of names people throw out, the Brian Dabbles of the world, the Eric Bieniemys of the world.
Yeah.
But that's what I want. I want an offensive. It doesn't even have to be super young, but an offensive-minded head coach. That's what I want.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Primary offensive-minded, but at bare minimum, just be one side of the ball minded. I don't want us hiring some wide receiver coach or some special teams guy. And I know a lot of people rag on Mike McCarthy, but speaking of the situation that he walked into, that was historically one of the worst defenses last year.
That's true.
And they got pieces on offense. And Dak Prescott, Giants fans have slept on Dak Prescott his whole career, pretty much up until this point. Right now, Dak Prescott has proven all the naysayers wrong. And he's proven that he might be worth the money that they signed him to. So they had a good situation over there. Amari Cooper's solid wide receiver. I think the move that they made to draft CeeDee Lamb was an incredible move. CeeDee Lamb is my favorite wide receiver. I cannot stop drafting him on fantasy teams. I've got him on like 4 fantasy teams right now. And we know Ezekiel Elliott, people were thinking Ezekiel Elliott fell off, right? Remember last season? They were playing games with Andy Dalton, and people are like, Ezekiel Elliott's falling off. Look at what Mike McCarthy has done with the combination of Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. Together, they always get 100 yards in a game. The Dallas Cowboys now can beat you with 2 different ways. If they want to throw the ball downfield like they did last week, they can do that. Or if they want to take it back to the Giants game where they just run all over you, they could do that too.
Yeah, well, when you have the threat to be able to run the ball like the way that Dallas can, that opens everything up. Dustin, man, thank you very much. They could fire all the coaches, but leave Rob Sale, please. Listen, I love Rob Sale. I love the job that he's done for the offensive line, based on the talent that he's been provided with.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at this offensive line it's a disgrace. What? And granted, there's been injuries. There's no doubt about it. I got to be as fair as I could be. Nick Gates goes down for the year. Shane Lemieux goes down for the year. But you see Matt Parrott. Matt Parrott got beat up by Nate Solder before the year started. And that tells you all you need to know in terms of whether or not the New York Giants made the right decision to push forward with the offensive line that they had. And going into the year, I consistently said, I hope the Giants are right. When I say I hope the Giants are right, that's me saying I think they made the wrong decision, but I hope that I'm wrong and they are right. I thought it was a monumental mistake to ignore the offensive line. And when I have an opinion like that, I always want to be wrong. I'm a fan. Okay. I'm not one of these guys that wants to laugh at people when I'm right. I want to be wrong. And sadly, it looks as if I'm going to be right because when you look at Matt Parrott looked lost playing on the left side. Matt Parrott could not beat out Nate Solder. And I want to see Matt Parrott in there because Nate Solder's useless at this point. He's not going to be a part of the future of the football team. But what Rob Sale has had to work with this offensive line, I actually think he's done a damn good job. Factoring in how the New York Giants offensive line did against the New Orleans Saints. But what I'm going to say, man, is if you lose Joe Judge, the new head coach is going to bring in his guys, and it's
Yeah.
possible he stays. When Joe Judge came in, they kept the special teams coordinator. I think they kept the wide receivers coach. So it's possible he stays, but obviously you're going to allow that new head coach to make those decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dustin on that right there. If there's one person that could stay, it's Rob Sale for sure.
Yeah, I think he's done a great job.
Yeah.
Jason, man, thank you very much. When I look at Dave Gettleman's draft, it looks like there was no goal. I feel like they just wanted to make the Patriots, and you can't try to recreate teams. Yeah, I mean, well, I think there was a goal. Here's what I'll say. Before this year, I could make sense of his picks. Like, I was like, okay, left. I would have flipped out if they didn't take a left tackle at 4th overall in 2020. I thought it was a no-brainer. You needed the blindside protector for Daniel Jones. So
Yeah.
I can make sense of the picks. Okay, you took Andrew Thomas. Okay, you took Jones. You thought he's your guy. You got to give the quarterback a chance and hope that he proves to be worthy of that pick. So it's understandable you take the quarterback. I didn't really like the defensive tackle pick with Dexter Lawrence at 17. But overall, I saw a plan, okay? This year, he lost me. He lost me this year when he abandoned the offensive line, in my opinion. I thought it was a crucial mistake on his part, and it's really where I started to be like, okay, I don't think this guy at this point knows what he's doing. When he just completely neglected the offensive line. Were there moves before that I could point to and be like, yeah, this is horrible? And 2018, I gave him, I don't even want to say I gave him a pass. It was a horrible year. But 2019, I'm like, all right, I'm going to give him a fresh slate. They're starting to rebuild now. They made a crucial mistake. I'm going to judge them going forward based off this rebuild from 2019. From there, I saw at least his thought process with some of the moves that he made. But this year, when it came to the draft, after you set yourself up in the way in which you did in free agency, he lost me.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't forget that they drafted 2 defensive tackles in 2018, and then you're going into 2019, you still need to draft a defensive tackle. To me, a lot of what he's done has made no sense. You had, a guy like Odell Beckham Jr., where you were talking about character flaws and all these things, and then you go and draft a guy like DeAndre Baker at the end of the first round. And to me, DeAndre Baker's a guy who's clearly has some problems off the field, and that showed too. The amount of cornerback depth that we have drafted and still had to go out and spend $30 million to bring in Adoree Jackson to be a starter who looks worse than Isaac Yiadom did last season. At least Isaac Yiadom could step up and make tackles on running backs. The zone running has been killing us this year. We got nobody on the edge. He's drafted a few people at the edge, and injuries have definitely held us back there. O'Shane Zimenez looks to be a letdown. Lorenzo Carter looks to be a letdown. I'm looking forward to seeing Ellerson Smith get on the field here, but he's about to dive into a situation that looks really awful, and it's going to be hard to look really good as a rookie coming off of IR when you're playing for a team like this at 1-5. So, for me, Dave Gettleman, I definitely agree with the statement here. I mean, the draft, it just seemed to have no angle, no plan. Like, why are we not drafting offensive line in 2020? It really made no sense. And you look at all these picks. I like to look back at the offensive skill position as well. The only person that he drafted for Daniel Jones in that whole tenure before the 2020 draft was Darius Slayton in the 5th round. What kind of sense does that make when we see this offensive struggling? And we knew we traded away our best offensive weapon in Odell Beckham. You could say what you want to say about him now, but that was our best weapon, and he was the one guy on the field on all those bad teams to me that looked like he never wanted to quit. He was always out there trying to make plays. And then you bring in these guys who have more character flaws, and you neglect the wide receiver position and the tight end position, and you're banking on a guy who's been dropping passes his whole career in Evan Ingram to just somewhere out the blue just step up and become this world-class tight end. It's unrealistic for a GM to be thinking that, and it kind of shows how out of touch that these GMs are with what's happening on the field.
Yeah, and I think another thing, obviously now being able to look back on it and some of the decisions that Judge and the Giants made during his tenure, Gettleman rather, and the Giants made during his tenure, I think another thing that they really overvalued were, I guess, like locker room leaders. And I'm not saying the Giants locker room was a mess. I'll be the first to say it, and it needed to be cleaned up. The 2017 team, they completely quit on the football team. It was a disgrace. It's the most embarrassing season I've ever seen as a New York Giants fan. But I think they overvalued that. You talk about the trade of Odell Beckham, which obviously I know we disagree on that. I didn't have a major issue with it. But for then you to go out there and replace him by spending $10 million a year on Golden Tate,
right?
That didn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think a major reason why they brought Tate in is they viewed him as a veteran leader, a guy that could help in the locker room. And I think they made Logan Ryan. I've talked about that going into the year. I don't think that was the best usage of the money that the New York Giants spent. I would have been okay with bringing back Ryan. I thought that they overpaid, and I thought they did it long before they had to in December. where they paid him
Yeah.
$10 million a year to a 32-year-old safety that nobody was looking to sign the prior season. So
Right.
I just think that, and obviously he's a great leader, and I think that was
Yeah.
obviously a major attraction there, and he's probably the biggest leader on this football team. But I think the New York Giants overvalued that aspect of a football team, during Dave Gettleman's tenure. I'll say that right now.
1000%. And another thing that I think he's been doing wrong is he's stacking players that play the same spot on the field. You know, you look at our safety situation right now where you draft a guy like Xavier McKinney and you got Logan Ryan out there and Jabril Peppers out there. They all are fighting to play kind of the same position. You let a guy like Landon Collins walk, and then you trade for Jabril Peppers, who's pretty much the same player for cheaper, but maybe a little bit worse at that time. Now Landon Collins looks to be pretty much completely washed. Go to the offensive side of the ball. You talked about Golden Tate. Golden Tate is primarily a slot wide receiver, and Sterling Shepard is one of the better slot wide receivers in the league. So you're bringing in people that you're double dipping at the same position. Now we're trying to move Shepard out to the outside and make him play a position that he's not used to playing. You draft Kadarius Toney, who is literally another slot wide receiver. So when he starts to excel, now it's like, where do we move Shepard? We got to move him back to the outside. You got to look at a roster and be able to fill positions individually and not just look at it like I'm stacking up players who have value. And we've just overstacked players in different positions when we should be looking to other positions. Where's the true free safety on this team that's going to lead this team? I feel like Logan Ryan is even playing a little bit out of position. Look at our linebackers. You're looking at guys who really can't come up and stop the run, but also don't get pressure on the quarterback. So, like, what are we doing there? We overspent on the draft, pretty much, drafting linebackers and cornerbacks, and it's still an issue. It's just a glaring problem that Dave Gettleman can't see. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a disaster. There's no doubt about it. Dustin says, actually, I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. No, I did not. Dustin says, what do you think? Do you think Judge and company fooled all the players this past year and a half too, and now they are starting to realize too? I don't know. I'm not in that locker room. I can't say what Joe Judge says to the players. I can't say how the players feel about Joe Judge. Logan Ryan's going to come out and say the right things because that's the type of player he is. And I know he's come out and said, that they're not giving up and they're still fighting. So I don't know. I can't say that for sure. But what I could say is I think he fooled the fan base. I can't say that he conclusively fooled the players, but I think he fooled the fan base. Myself included. I think pretty much most people, if they're being honest with themselves, based off the first year and what he said in his opening press conference. And, I think a lot of us believed in him. But here's what I'll say about Joe Judge, man. I think one day maybe he could be a really good head coach, but I don't think he's ready yet. I think he's in over his head. And I just, at this point in time, he's made a lot of dumb decisions. You even go back to last year with how he handled Daniel Jones. We talked about Daniel Jones this year in terms of the concussion and not taking him out with 7 minutes to go in the game when you're down 31 points. You go back to last year in the Cardinal game when he was limping back to the huddle in the third quarter. You're leaving your quarterback out there. Like, what are you doing? You were down by like 30 points in that game as well. Like, he's made and the musical chairs on the offensive line. He's made head scratching decisions for me as a New York Giants fan over his tenure here, and I could only hope that he gets better. I want him to be the long-term answer. I don't want to have to bring in another head coach after just 2 years. I think it's a complete and utter disgrace that we've become that type of organization. But I think he's fooled the fans. I'll say that. It at least appears to me 6 games into this season that Joe Judge is not prepared to take on this role as a head coach for the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'm right there with the both of y'all. And something that's puzzling to me too is that they hired 3 straight head coaches that have no head coaching experience.
Well, Shermer had head coaching experience with the Browns.
Oh, with the Browns briefly, yeah. But coming off being an offensive coordinator in Minnesota, Shermer's not some world beater head coach. I just think you got to bring in a guy that has proven he can do it. And the Giants have failed to do that. It's becoming very frustrating. But I do think they fooled us all here. Just leading us on in the offseason to make us say, we're going to trust them in this process. I think the process is now a lot more than halfway through it, and it's just time to move on.
Yeah, for sure. Jason Benjamin, man, thank you so much, man. I'm just going to read him here. I don't have him on the on the StreamYard. He says the other issue we have is we have no identity. Ask yourself, what do we do well? Really think about it. What do we hang our hat on? We haven't had an identity with this football team. Jason, when you think about the best New York Giants teams, I say it all the time, and I don't like to relive history. I know a lot of Giants fans hate that. They want to think about the here and now. But when we're talking about identity, I'm going to go back in history. I'm going to talk about the New York Giants. When you think about the New York Giants teams that had success from 2005 to 2012, when we did not have a losing season, During that tenure, we did not have a losing season. We went 71-50. Since then, I think we're like 48-85 or something. Like, it's bad, and we've had one winning season since. We, like you said, we had an identity. You think about the NASCAR package. You think about the pass rush. You think about the offensive line that we had. I think about the 2008 game against the Ravens. I always go back to that. That is one of my favorite regular season games of all time. I remember watching that at a bar, and the Giants going in. The Ravens had like the best run defense in football. The Giants ran for like 270 yards against them. They said, we don't care how good you are. You know exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to pound it down your throat anyway. The New York Giants had an identity back then. We're going to smash in the mouth, and when the game is on the line, we believe in our quarterback to go out there and get the W. And more often than not, when Eli had the opportunity in his prime, surrounded by a good roster, he got the job done. And we were always getting pressure on the quarterback. Right now, on a week-to-week basis, I don't know what the hell we're going to do on offense. I don't know what the hell we're going to do on defense. You hit the nail on the head. We have no identity with this football team, and we haven't had an identity for years.
Yeah, you said it all right there, man. Definitely haven't had any identity, and that makes me compare it to the Cleveland Browns a good bit, because you know the identity. The identity over there is not Baker Mayfield, and Baker Mayfield, he kind of gets a long leash because of that, because he doesn't look to be making a lot of mistakes, because he's not the identity of the team. And it goes back to what I was saying about how you can win with quarterbacks like that, but you got to build the identity around them. You can't have them be the identity throwing the ball down the field when that's not what they're specialists at. And the Giants have failed to do that, and that's why I also harped on the second running back was an important thing here. For me, the Giants have always been a good team when they can run the ball. Run the ball, stop the run, get to the pass, get to the passer, have a good pass rush. We just lack in all those departments right now. And like homie said, man, there is no identity. I don't even know where to start when you think about the best department on this team. I don't even know where to start.
We don't have one. The best department is a shitty one. Yeah. That's it. I mean, we don't have a good department on this team. I look at the offensive line, horrible. Now, there's times where you look at the offensive line and you're like, okay, they played well, but overall, I cannot go in and week out and be like, the offensive line is going to play great. I look at the pass rush, horrible. Never getting pressure on the quarterback. The defensive line is okay. It's okay. But
I'm going to say the defensive line's trash.
Yeah, it's not good. I'm talking about like Leonard Williams next month. Their run defense this year has been horrible. The linebacking core, especially with Martinez out, is bad. The cornerbacks have been underwhelming. The strength going into this year we thought was going to be the secondary. It has not been. There's really there's nothing on this team.
Which leaves us at the quarterback maybe being the best position or the best player right now on a team trying to make the most plays, and he looks god-awful.
Because he's got no help. Yeah. That's definitely something to do with it. But it's a disaster, man. This team's a disaster. Nameless Grifter, man, thank you very much. Homesick, so I'm watching live today. Here's a positive, I guess. We're one win away from tying for second place. Yeah, and the Knicks are also one win away tonight on opening night from tying the New York Giants for the amount of wins. But if you want to look positive, sure, we could be tied for second place in the worst division in the NFL. So you're right. Good way to look at things. I always like when people have a glass half full approach. The RZA says, I feel bad for Jones. I think going to a stable situation is best for him. Get a stopgap quarterback and fix the line, then draft your quarterback. RZA, man, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I feel bad for Jones. I'll be the first to say it. I don't think, like you said, I don't think a lot of fans realize exactly what a franchise quarterback is. I think I'm a little bit more lenient than you. I think there's probably 7 or 8 franchise quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Brady. I think Rodgers.
For sure, Brady now.
Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
I think Josh Allen is a franchise quarterback. I think Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
I think Russell Wilson. And there's like maybe 1 or 2 more, but there's not many. Justin Herbert, I think, is definitely trending towards being a franchise quarterback. For sure. But I don't think to me, like I said, my definition of a franchise quarterback is a quarterback that I can pay 15% of the salary cap and he could still win football games, because he could win without ideal circumstances around him. And you have to ask yourself as a New York Giants fan if Jones is that guy, and most quarterbacks are not. It's why a lot of pretty good quarterbacks end up going to other teams. Guys like Kirk Cousins, didn't cut it with Washington because they didn't feel like he was worthy of that long-term investment. And a lot of times when you pay those guys like Matt Ryan's, like Matt Stafford's, the team pulls apart. So I agree with you as of now. I mean, how could I say that conclusively? But I do feel bad for Jones, because I do think Jones has some talent. And I do think Jones, in the ideal circumstance with the Saints, with the Cowboys, with the Browns, with the Titans, I do think he can win football games, but unfortunately, he came into a situation where the New York Giants are a complete and utter disgrace.
Yeah.
And, you look at the Jets right now with Zach Wilson. They're not going to be winning football games anytime soon because they have nothing to support him with. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. As good of a quarterback as Trevor Lawrence is, he's not winning football games because the team is trash.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of the quarterbacks you listed as far as franchise guys. I just think some of them, it took them a little bit longer to prove that they were the franchise guy. When guys are coming out of college, that's when it's the most difficult to try to determine if they are a franchise guy. A lot of people didn't think, myself included, I didn't think Lamar Jackson was going to be a franchise quarterback coming out of the draft. But, the coach had faith in it, and he built the system around him. He saw something that leaned him towards that, and now you're starting to see it. Patrick Mahomes is one that I was high off, the whole time. I was like, Patrick Mahomes is going to be that guy. I remember when he sat down with John Gruden on ESPN and they had that quarterback room thing. I was looking at him like the stats, the mind, just how sharp he was. I was like, that kid can be a really good quarterback. And I think he benefited from sitting behind Alex Smith for a year on a good team already. They showed you the Kansas City Chiefs were already a really good team, and that the quarterback was the last thing that they needed to really take them over the top, and Patrick Mahomes was the player to do that. All the other ones that you named, I totally agree. Like Aaron Rodgers, who sat behind one of the greatest in the game too with Brett Favre, had a lot of time to develop.
Same thing with Mahomes. He sat behind Alex Smith.
Smith, yeah.
And came into the Reed scheme.
Which is why I want to see how Jordan Love is going to look when he actually gets some playing time, because he's been sitting behind the bench for a long time, and I bet he will.
I bet you he looks good because he's coming into a good circumstance. Bob, man, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. He says, I want a GM from the Rams and Brian Dabble. I think trade Jones and sign a stopgap quarterback. Build up the team in 2022. 2023 is supposed to be quarterback rich. Bob, I wouldn't be against that. And it's kind of what Rizza just said. He feels bad for Jones, and he wants to get an opportunity somewhere else to thrive. And, and if he feels Jones can't be the guy long term. But
now, Tanner, who would you bring in as the stopgap quarterback? Shout out to my boy, the Beard, right now in the chat, who's a Washington football team fan. You see, when they were looking for a quarterback in free agency, they went out there and spent $10 million on Ryan Fitzpatrick because there really wasn't nothing out there. So what if that is the case where there's really no real stopgap quarterback in free agency that we could pull?
Then you stick with Jones. Then you
got to stick with Jones, which that might make this last a lot longer and go into that maybe 8-9 years of a rebuild here.
Yeah, I mean, you think about – I don't think a stopgap quarterback is going to make this team win games.
Right.
It's just kind of a hold me over until you find your quarterback and you fix your team. You get your offensive lineman, you blah, 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 blah. But a stopgap quarterback is a guy like, I don't know, Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know what his contract is.
For sure. And I think Teddy Bridgewater, if he could stay healthy, could win a lot of games in this league.
Yeah, a stopgap quarterback. I'm not even going to bring up Aaron Rodgers. He's not coming here. A stopgap quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo. A stopgap quarterback is Marcus Mariota. A stopgap quarterback is those guys, right? So that to me is the definition of a stopgap quarterback, a guy that could step in here and maybe you catch lightning in a bottle like the Giants did with Kerry Collins, because that's essentially what he was until we got Eli Manning. But more often than not, it's usually just going to be a guy that mans the fort, kind of like Bridgewater is doing right now with the Broncos. I don't think the Broncos think he's the long-term answer. He's a guy that's going to play there for a year or two until they find, or they hope that they find, their guy that could be the 15-year answer. That to me is what a stopgap quarterback is. And I think there's a handful of guys out there that if you want to go that route, that you could bring in, but they're not going to be the answer to all of our problems.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota is a good comparison too, because what happened to him with the Tennessee Titans is similar to what's happening with Daniel Jones right now. You saw some flashes of a quarterback who could win games, a guy who, they were right around 9-7, 8-8 the whole time he was there. But when it was time to re-sign him and give him the big money, they felt like, hey, we can't give the big money. Just like you was talking about with Kirk Cousins. And I'm here in Washington, D.C. I was one that was like, y'all need to go ahead and pay Kirk Cousins. He's a good quarterback. He fails in prime time, but I think you could fix that over time and build the right pieces around him. And now Washington is still struggling to try to find a quarterback.
Yeah, I was one that thought it was the right decision when they moved on, because I didn't think he was worthy of that big-time extension. But you're right. I mean, since they let him go, they haven't had a quarterback near his skill level. He always had them at least around 500. V-Man, thank you very much. He says, who is your top 5 head coaching candidates? Kellen Moore is mine. I mean, top 5, again, it's very hard for me to come up with that. But I know Bieniemy is definitely going to be on most people's list for top 5. Yeah. Kellen Moore, like you said, he's off to a really odd start. Kellen Moore and Bieniemy to me, though, if I'm being completely honest, look what they have. Like, Kellen Moore has like offensive coordinator's dream. Like you talk about the offensive line that Dallas possesses, the running game that Dallas possesses, the weapons on the outside that Dallas possesses. So he looks great, just like Jason Garrett looked great as an offensive coordinator with Dallas before he got the head coaching job. That's why he got the head coaching job. So I don't know. He's still inexperienced. He's got a great circumstance, and he's doing great. Eric Bieniemy, same thing. He's got Andy Reid. Andy Reid's been calling the play since he's been there, and the Kansas City Chiefs offense is electric. So I don't know what the real answer is. I just hope they make the right decision. Brian Dabble's another guy that a lot of people bring up. Jim Harbaugh's another guy that a lot of people bring up. Like, there's so many names I could throw out at you. I don't, that's something that I really have to wait and see in the offseason if they elect to fire Joe Judge. Who's the 5 or 6 candidates that they're bringing in before I could really give my true and full opinion into, I guess, who I think they should hire.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. Yeah.
And let's see what we got. Bob says, I'd rather wait for a franchise guy and have stopgaps that then reach again. The next quarterback we draft should have traits we can see day one to see as a top 10 guy. I agree with you. I think that's what the worst organizations do. And that's what I worry about, Bob, is the New York Giants reaching on a quarterback this year just to draft a quarterback. Like, I see fans all the time come to my streams, Authentic, and they say, name the quarterback, Malik Willis, whoever, in this year's draft, and they say, well, he's better than Jones. But I don't want a guy that's just better than Jones. I want a guy, like he just said, that I could definitively feel like this guy has the ability to be a top 5 quarterback. And if I don't feel that way, I'm not drafting the quarterback. I'm not making a 3 or 4 year investment in said quarterback just to have a moderate increase at the position, because that's not going to be good enough if he's not a top 5 quarterback to win with what he's surrounded with right now on this New York Giants football team.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that too, because if you look at Deshaun Watson, who we know is a franchise quarterback, especially exiting last season, they only had 4 wins, and he threw for 33 touchdowns, like 7 interceptions, had like 4,600 yards, and they still couldn't win games. So even when you got a guy like that, if you can't put something around him, and I do think that they have an A1 wide receiver over there when Deshaun Watson was there with Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks he flies under the radar, but he's a really good wide receiver. And when they had Will Fuller when he was healthy or not suspended, that was a good little tandem, but it still didn't win games. It shows that you got to fill all these spots on the roster, and you got to have dogs that are going to go out there and get plays. Why are the Giants missing on a lot of these players in the draft like TJ Watt? Why aren't we bringing in players that are like that can single-handedly win you a game? You look at that the game against the Seahawks when he forced a fumble against what's my man, Geno Smith. He made 2 plays that completely changed the outcome of that game. And I picked the Seahawks in an upset in that game, and literally that was why they didn't win the game. He made a big 3rd down stop, then he came back on the next final drive, forces the fumble. Like, we need those kind of dogs on our team. And sometimes those guys aren't the nicest guys. They're mean dudes. They've had cruddy lives. Sometimes you got to take a risk on a player like that's going to go out there and just be a bruiser and be an alpha for a defense or for an offensive line, because without that, the Giants aren't going to be able to do nothing.
For sure. And back to the Ingram pick, by the way, that is and there's definitely worse picks by the Giants, okay, in terms of how the players turned out. But you look at Eric Flowers now, he's a pretty good player. Eli Apple obviously didn't work out. But in terms of not making sense, that to me was Jerry Reese's worst pick because of what you just said, because the New York Giants, like the Flowers pick made sense. It just didn't work out. Like, we needed a tackle. Yeah. The Eli Apple pick, I didn't love it. I thought that they panicked. But the Evan Ingram pick, when you couldn't block to bring in a hybrid tight end who can't block to save his life, when you had Ryan Ramczyk on the board, who's been an all-pro lineman in the NFL for the Saints, and when you had TJ Watt on the board, that pick just blows my mind in hindsight. So that oh God, don't even get me started with that pick. Tommy says, hey guys, the issue is the Maras. They hired Dave, Pat, and Ben. An outside firm needs to make wholesale recommendations to the Giants. There's no doubt about it. That the Maras are more responsible than anybody else, in my opinion. But, we just have to hope, because there's not going to be an outside. We could talk about that. We think that's what needs to happen for this to get going in the right direction. But we have to face reality, too. That's not going to happen. Yeah. Mara is still going to be the owner. He's still going to operate the way that he feels he should as an owner of the football team. But we have to hope as an organization as that he is growing and learning from the mistakes that he has made in the past. That's what we have to hope for. They're not going to bring in an out, there's not going to be a new owner. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. Can't bank on that. That's Fantasyland. And let's see. Lou says, how do you feel about Leonard Williams complaining about the fans booing him? Here's what I'll say about Leonard Williams. First things first, I think Leonard Williams has played better than a lot of fans have given him credit for so far this year. I think and obviously he's going to get a lot of heat because the team's losing and he signed a huge contract. He had a really good game this past week, and he's been getting a lot of triple teams because he's got no help now on that defensive line. And that is probably a major reason why Austin Johnson had 3 sacks for the Giants before this past contest, because Leonard Williams is eating up all the double and triple teams and he's giving other players opportunities to get after the quarterback. So I still think he's a good player. He's not worth the contract that he signed. But in terms of going after the fan base for booing him, give me a break. I mean, I said the same thing with Javier Baez with the Mets. When he kind of first came to the New York Mets and he was complaining about the fans booing him, and Baez was great for the Mets. He went out there and he had a fantastic year, and I think the Mets are going to re-sign him. But it's the same thing with Leonard Williams. Listen, at the end of the day, the New York Giants are literally, and we have to face this as fans, and we have to face this as an organization, the New York Giants are literally the worst team in the NFL, at least since 2017. The worst organization in the NFL. And when you look at this team right now, Authentic, there is nothing to look at and be like, okay, they're building. No, they're nowhere near building. As a matter of fact, they're going backwards. So for Leonard Williams to come out there and say, I think the fans are completely wrong for booing. What are you talking about? So
for me, that one, it was a little bit out of context because I
do
watch all of them. Oh, you didn't get to see it? Okay, because I watch all the pressers in entirety. They're usually like 40 minutes after the game. And the beat writer had asked him, how do you feel about the boos? And I think in this situation, it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing. It's like no fan wants to hear a player complaining about the boos, but because he's coming off that loss and he wants to be a little bit honest, he tried to answer the question honestly. He didn't attack the fan base while doing it, though. He just said, to be honest, I don't like it. That nobody's going to like boos. Nobody likes being booed. Right. So, I think that also speaks to the culture, right? Because like Joe Judge, you got to have your players media trained. Leonard Williams is a guy who is not at every presser after the game either. He's not a normal face you see up there. It's normally Jabril Peppers, Daniel Jones, Galladay, Sterling Shepard. Lately, we've been getting Kadarius Toney. But to just throw him out there, I feel like maybe they thought because he had a better game, it was a good time to put him out there on the podium and speak. But he's a player that I think is frustrated, and when he said that, he said it so timid and so soft. Like, I never knew that Leonard Williams was like this big teddy bear like that spoke so calm, and he seemed genuinely hurt about it, and he seemed like he's a player who's out there giving his 100% effort and still the team is still losing. So Leonard Williams being one of the older guys on this roster too, I think he's like in his 6th or 7th season maybe. Something like that. I think he's getting sick of just losing. And it came after a question from Renan where Renan had asked him, being a guy, and I thought this was a low blow. He asked him about his record as in the league, which is ridiculous. I've never heard somebody ask a D tackle or D end about their record in the NFL, and he was talking about how do you feel about the losing and all that stuff. You could clearly tell Leonard Williams was just very sad and just they caught him at the wrong moment, and we can't forget the players are human at the end of the day. I didn't take it as an attack on me as a fan at all.
Like I said, I saw the quotes. I didn't actually see the live presser. So like you said, a lot of times when you read quotes, it comes across differently than when you actually know the full context of the, with the video evidence in the press conference. So it's still not good to hear that as a fan.
Definitely not good, yeah.
But at the same time, in that context, and again, I'll have to watch back the video evidence, maybe you give them a little bit more slack than some of the Giants fans are giving them. Yeah. And Luke, man, thank you very much. DJ is a franchise quarterback. Authentic is wrong. If he wasn't, he would have lost to the Saints. He had a bad game, but we all know why. Stop blaming DJ. All right, I'll speak on this, and he addressed you, and then I'm going to let you speak on it. Here's what I'll say. I don't even think Authentic is blaming Daniel Jones. I don't think he's blaming Daniel Jones for why the New York Giants are where they are. I think he recognizes that this team is complete trash. I just think that Authentic, and I actually agree with him on this, doesn't view Daniel Jones as a guy that could that without the proper amount of help, which is a disgrace that he doesn't have it, could overcome that. And most quarterbacks cannot. Okay, that's like he said. He thought there's only 3 quarterbacks in the NFL that can. So I don't think he's necessarily destroying Daniel Jones. He just doesn't view Daniel Jones in this situation as a guy that is a franchise quarterback and a guy that you could really push forward. Like, if we're being honest with ourselves, and I want to root for Daniel Jones. I love Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones works his ass off. I think he's a guy that could really be the face of this franchise. And he seems like a guy that is a pretty good leader that guys want to get behind. And I think could mature to be a good quarterback in the NFL. But if we're being honest with ourselves, how can you justify if this team goes out there and wins 3 or 4 games this year, giving Daniel Jones a long-term commitment at the quarterback position when you can't build a team properly when he's making next to nothing. And I think that's kind of where Authentic was going. But go ahead, Authentic. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you said a lot of good points. The thing about I had somebody actually tweet me something about one of the comments I said about Joe Judge, and they were like, "You're wrong." But the thing is that everybody has their own definitions of certain words and caliber of players in the NFL. And for me, this is a realization that I've had as of recently. It's kind of like the elite conversation. You remember when we used to always say, Eli, you can't spell elite without Eli? And we all, as Giants fans, thought Eli Manning was an elite quarterback. Some people will say that an elite quarterback is the top 3. Some people will say it's the top 5. Some people might say it's the top 10. For me, that's why I explained my definition of a franchise quarterback before I talked about Daniel Jones. There might be nobody on all of YouTube that copped for Daniel Jones the first couple of years like how I did. I'm a big Daniel Jones fan. I'm a huge Daniel Jones fan. I think that he could get the job done. There's no question about that. But for me, my definition today, and I'm as a content creator, as a fan, I'm able to change my opinion whenever I want to and say, hey, I was wrong at that point.
Especially in football. You know what?
Especially in football.
I think a lot of people, like, they get on content creators because they're like, you flip-flop. But football is it's not like baseball where you have 162 games to evaluate a team. And when they go on a 10-game slump, you're like, all right, let's wait it out. Let's see what happens. In football, when you start 1-5, that's almost half your season or close to half your season. So, and on a week-to-week basis, football, each game means so much. Each football game means 10 times what a normal baseball game means. I think it's just natural that you're going to have fluctuations, in your opinion.
Yeah, most definitely. And I try to even before I put an opinion out there, I try to be very confident in it. And this season is when I felt I learned what my definition of a franchise quarterback is. A franchise quarterback is a guy who can overcome adversity. He can overcome a bad roster, bad coaching, bad play calling, bad game plans. He can make plays at the end of games to win his team games. Daniel Jones, how many game-winning drives have we seen from Daniel Jones? Not many, if any, to be honest.
Well, the Saints game
outside the Saints game, which is Daniel Jones' best game. And when I saw him, developing and maturing this year, and coming into the season, 3 straight games over 90 passer rating, and then 4 straight after that, I'm like, that has never happened in his career. I'm starting to wonder, is this a coaching thing? But listen, man, I'll break it down this simple. There is no way a franchise quarterback fumbles and turns the ball over as much as Daniel Jones does. He needs help around him, and he needs the game plan simplified around him to be able to excel in this league. He's not going to do what Eli Manning used to do at the end of these games and win us these games, on his back, on his shoulders. That's just not the kind of player that he is at this point in his career. And if you listen to what we were talking about earlier when Tanner was listing his list of franchise quarterbacks, I mentioned it there too, that Tom Brady's not a guy that he comes in the league and they're like, we got our franchise guy. He has to go out there and prove to them that he is that franchise guy. And just for me, at this point in Daniel Jones' career, he's not a franchise guy. He doesn't have that it factor to be able to overcome a lot of problems like a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. In this offseason with Lamar Jackson, he had 3 running backs go down. He's got his left tackle went down. He's got his left tackle gone down. He had who was going to be a premier wide receiver in that offense, go down for the beginning of the year in Rashard Bateman, who's missed a bunch of games now, finally back. Looks like he could be that guy. And Lamar Jackson overcome that with all the pressure, with everyone trying to move the goalpost on him. He overcome that. Now, Daniel Jones, when I think about his good games, all I think about is the Saints and the Bucs. Maybe that Dallas Cowboys game at the end of last season, but there's no game where I go, man, Daniel Jones was just lights out like that outside of those games.
This year was really good.
Washington game this year was okay, but he didn't win.
Yeah, no, he didn't win. Exactly.
And let's keep it funky. If Darius Slayton catches that pass, I was at that game in the end zone where they threw that pass. I saw it. I played quarterback in high school. You can put a better ball out there. And the reason why the ball wasn't better is because he had pressure that the offensive line allowed the defenders to come in and get in his face, and he got hit, so he couldn't get a good throw. Now, a quarterback who's a franchise guy, we've seen it with Patrick Mahomes all the time. He can have pressure in his face, be falling sideways, no look, bam, throw the ball down the field, 50 yards is right on target. So for me, it's like, yeah, Darius Slayton dropped that pass. I also played receiver. I'm catching that ball. Right? And if I don't catch that ball, that's on me. But at the same time, if you're that guy, you're going to find a way to get your team in the end zone, win that game. Let's rewind it back a little bit even more. Look at the 3rd and 7 that they set him up for with Sterling Shepard in that Washington football team game. After the Darius Slayton drop, you have another chance to win that game on 3rd and 7. You put the ball behind him. Look at the 2-point conversion against the Bucs from last season. The pass is late and off target. Daniel Jones has repeatedly showed you that he is not a franchise guy under the definition that I present here. And I know a lot of Giants fans won't like this. At this moment in time, I think Jalen Hurts looks like he could be more of a franchise quarterback than Daniel Jones right now because he's not fumbling the ball all over the field. When he gets in the red zone, he takes care of business. Yeah, he don't got the arm. Yeah, he doesn't have all the talent, but he knows how to be able to put that team on his back that has no wide receivers. We're not talking about big money, $72 million guys who are injury prone already being signed to the Giants, or a guy like Kadarius Toney, because Kadarius Toney looks a lot better than Devontae Smith right now. They don't have a lot of weapons over there, and the coach is holding him back clearly. I mean, they had a stint there where they went 2 weeks. They only ran the ball 13 times to their running backs. They gave the ball to Miles Sanders one time last week in the first quarter. So I know Jalen Hurts is not looking like a good quarterback. I'm not saying that, he's a better quarterback than Daniel Jones right now, but when you talk about that it factor that a quarterback needs to have to win games, Jalen Hurts looks like he has it more. Every game, 300 yards, 300. Like I talked about Josh Allen. He went 2 seasons without having a 300-yard game where they were getting beaten a bunch of games. Jalen Hurts already has 4 games of over 300 yards. He's only started in 10 games in the NFL. I think we got to pump the brakes a little bit. I don't think if I had to bet my money on it, I don't think Jalen Hurts would be a franchise quarterback. But at this moment in time, we're looking at Daniel Jones like he's a franchise guy. I don't think we can do that. I don't look at quarterbacks like Ryan Tannehill and say franchise guy.
I look at both, and I don't think either one's a franchise guy.
And I could totally agree with that too. I just bring that up to just show that like Daniel Jones don't got that winner in him. He don't got that.
I think Hurts and I don't watch every Eagles game. When I watch the Eagles games, first off, his throwing to me is bad. I don't think he's a very good thrower of the football, and I think that a lot of his stats come in garbage time. Like that's at least what I've seen when I've watched the Eagles games.
But there are quarterbacks that they talked about just like that for a long time. Dak Prescott being one of them.
Yeah,
they're like,
fair.
oh, Dak Prescott puts up garbage time.
Yeah, maybe he will end up being good. I'm not.
And he might. And I'm not banking on it, Tanner. Don't get me wrong. I'm not banking on it. But I just see all day on Twitter, I see people saying, "Oh, Daniel Jones over Jalen Hurts and all this." I'm just like, for one, you shouldn't be happy about that. And for two, Jalen Hurts looks like he is the kind of guy that his mind is clear when he's making plays on the field, where Daniel Jones looks like a robot who's like, I'm not trying to make the mistake.
I've said that a lot about Daniel Jones throughout his career, but again, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact part of it, I really feel this way because I didn't really see so much of the robot with Jones in his rookie year. You saw it from time to time, but for the most part, I was surprised his rookie year because I thought he was going to be like an Alex Smith type quarterback that was very apprehensive to try to take shots. His rookie year, he was going out there and slinging it. And since then, part of me really truly feels that Judge and Garrett have gotten into his head. You have got to limit turnovers, and it's almost made him more robotic, where he's apprehensive to try to really take shots down the field. It may be somewhat of the coaching as well.
Yeah, and the experience that he's had in the league. The kid has fumbled more than any quarterback I can ever remember. I've been watching football for 30 years. Yeah. I've never remembered a quarterback having a fumbling issue like this. And we know in this day and age in the NFL, the leashes are very short, not only for quarterbacks, but for all positions. It took Tiki Barber 4 or 5 years to correct that fumbling issue. That would never happen in today's age of the NFL. You fumbling for 2 years straight, we're getting rid of you. That's it. And Daniel Jones, I know it's in his head. And the offensive line does not help him. The offensive line is not helping when you got your left tackle injured and you got the replacements in there looking like straight up garbage. It's hard for a guy like that to look good in this offense who we know has a turnover problem. I tweeted out the other day, I said, do y'all think that Evan Ingram's drop problem is as bad as Daniel Jones' fumble problem? And a lot of people were like, oh, it's behind him, it's behind him, it's behind him. But it's only behind him when he has the proper help up front. Daniel Jones is not the kind of guy that's going to be able to make plays when things around him are going wrong because there's something in his mind that he cannot play. He cannot keep his composure when things are going wrong. He does everything right and he still fumbles. You look at the Denver game. He runs, he breaks out of the pocket. He's running up the middle. Everything looks right. He goes to put 2 hands on the ball. I'm like, oh, this is about to be perfect. Bam, ball comes out. You look at him getting hurt on the play on the goal line against was that against Dallas when he had against Dallas when he had the concussion. That play is a dead play. Sometimes you got to just go, this is over. You can't just try to lower your shoulders and try to do your best impersonation of Derrick Henry on the goal line when you're a quarterback, and now it's cost him games. We're looking at Daniel Jones. He's been hurt every year. People want to say he's a franchise quarterback also because he has the mobility kind of thing. They should just completely remove that from his game. Allow him to do what Aaron Rodgers does. When Aaron Rodgers has to run, he runs. But they're not sitting there running RPOs with Aaron Rodgers. He's got some legs on him, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, man, I think you bring up some good points for sure. I still think Daniel Jones could be a good quarterback, but it's not proven. It's not he's still way too inconsistent. I'll definitely agree with that. And there's definitely
100%.
still a lot of faults to his game. Bob, man, thank you very much. I really think that Chris said 2 years ago. I really think what Chris said 2 years ago has come true. A lot of Giants fans gave Daniel Jones the elite title too early, and now it hasn't happened. Well, I said the same thing with Judge before the year started, yet I get criticized for pumping Judge up too much. And last year, listen, I was a big fan of Judge when we hired him, and I really like what they were building. But before the year started, you go back, watch my streams, I said countless times, I saw the media anytime that the New York Giants would do something that was perceived good in terms of a personnel decision, Judge would get the credit.
Yep.
And anytime something bad would happen, Gettleman would get the blame. And I knew in my heart, I'm like, we have got to slow this down. We have got to give Judge equal criticism and praise in terms of these situations. Like, if you're going to say that Judge is responsible for a good personnel move, you also got to bash him when you think something's a bad personnel move. You can't give Gettleman all the blame. And I really felt like a lot of people were building Judge up to knock him down. And I think the same thing fell victim to Daniel Jones. I think his rookie year, there were a lot of people that were like, yeah, he's the second coming of this. He's the second coming of that. Danny Dimes after his first.
And I was one of them. I tried to even coin him a new nickname and call him Danny Dubs entering this season. Daniel Jones has repeatedly just let us down. Let's keep it real. And I don't know if that is a combination of maybe the roster issues that he's dealing with and maybe trying to put too much on his shoulders. But look, you can look at a guy like Lamar Jackson, okay? He started off that game where he threw for 400 yards. It was the best game of over 40 throws by any quarterback. There's been over 1,000 quarterbacks who have done this, and Lamar Jackson had the best game. But people forget, in the beginning of that game, he fumbled it twice. But he can overcome those things. Daniel Jones is not the kind of guy that's going to have 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, and be able to overcome it. And I think the proof is in the pudding.
What I will say to that, Authentic, and I agree, I think part of that is also because Daniel Jones' team sucks.
Totally.
Like if Daniel Jones was on the Cowboys, let's just reverse the quarterbacks just for that game. Cowboys, Giants. If Jones has those 2 issues in the first quarter, do I think Jones on the Cowboys could overcome those mistakes? Yes.
Would you bank on it, though? Would you bank on it?
Obviously, I think Dak is more likely to overcome.
I think Dak is in a whole nother.
I'm not trying to say that, but my point is, I think part of the reason why he can't overcome mistakes is because the team he's on is god awful. Where if you make any mistakes with the New York Giants, it's game set match.
Yeah,
it's game set match, man. True Rappers, man. Thank you very much. I'm late. It may have been said, but it's time to blow it up. It may suck, but it's inevitable. Starts with getting a right tackle to pair with Andrew Thomas, a sniff of any pass rush. I agree. All right, let's talk draft real quick because that's obviously kind of
real briefly though before we go into the draft.
Yeah,
just real briefly. Okay, I think that a lot of fans need to step out of the Giants fan base and look at it from a different perspective. And I think here in DC, I get that, right? I'm one that watches Taylor Heineke from an outside eye, right? And I think he's an average quarterback. But if you go around the leagues and you listen to some of the fans, they will tell you that Taylor Heineke is trash. Go around the league and look at what the reputation is of Daniel Jones. That's all I want to say about that because it is not good. Yeah. Nobody's looking at him. I don't even think we could put Daniel Jones in the bracket of a Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is too accomplished.
Well, how could you? Ryan Tannehill right now is a top 10 quarterback or a borderline top 10 quarterback.
And I said at the beginning of the year, if Daniel Jones could be Derek Carr, the Giants are going places. And I know circumstances present themselves with injuries and things like that. I've never remembered a team being this injured ever. But at the same time, you got to look at it from an outside eye. And it kind of goes to what you were saying about Joe Judge, too. It's like everybody want to give him credit. They want to find places to give him credit. But I'm one who was on the Daniel Jones ship, and now I'm off it because they've surrounded him with nothing but terrible talent. They thought that they could do it in a one offseason, just get him a bunch of Ferraris, and that it was just going to turn out great for him. And in my heart of hearts, I hope that would be the case, that he could get it together, but you're still seeing a quarterback who's going out there trying to do too much and still getting injured.
Yeah, I think last week what was so discouraging for me, and again, I understand it because like you said, everybody's hurt. Andrew Thomas goes down. He's got no help whatsoever. But Daniel Jones, to me, it was for me why it was such a I guess discouraging performance wasn't because he threw 3 picks. Like I understand, like you're playing from behind, you have no help whatsoever. You're trying to make something out of nothing. But the fact that he's not developed enough as a quarterback at this point to know when he can't play superhero ball. And when he like last year you saw it, he tried to do more than what he was capable of doing, and that's what we saw last week. And that to me was what was so discouraging. Like some of the throws he made, you knew it was an interception the second he threw it. Like you have to be smarter as a quarterback. You have to realize I'm not Aaron Rodgers. I'm not Pat Mahomes. I cannot do superhuman things. And last week that was what was discouraging for me. And listen, as a fan of the Giants, Eli Manning had those games too. Going back to the year in which he won the Super Bowl, he threw 4 picks against it might have been 5 picks against the Vikings in one game or whatever it was. But he learned and he grew from it. But so far up to this point, we have not seen Jones learn and grow from it.
And the team around Eli Manning gave him a lot of second chances. I can remember I always talk about it like 7 minutes left in the game. Eli Manning was probably going to get 3 more opportunities. 7 minutes left in the game for Daniel Jones. You'd be lucky to see him get 2 more opportunities because this defense has just been so bad. They can't stop anybody. And I don't want people to get it twisted. Like, I am a Daniel Jones fan. If you tune into my show, you know that I'm a big Daniel Jones supporter. But the thing is, they have not put him in the position to succeed, and he has not shown you that he's that guy that can do it when he doesn't have the surrounding talent around him. A couple of guys go down. Yeah, we can blame that on the coaching as well because they don't have depth on this team. Losing your left tackle should not ruin your offensive line the way it has for the New York Giants.
And Rudy says, how would you guys define a franchise quarterback? Rudy's a great supporter of mine, been with me forever. I kind of said it earlier, but for me, a franchise quarterback is a guy, and I say it's when you pay a guy 15 or 20% of the salary cap, because generally speaking, when you do that, he's not going to have ideal circumstances. And few quarterbacks can do that. Some can, some can't, most can't. That to me is a franchise quarterback, a guy that when he does not have ideal circumstances could still perform at a very high level.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Deshaun Watson is a franchise quarterback. I said this already earlier. You look at the statistics, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 4,500 plus yards or something like that, and the team won 4 games. So that goes to show you that even with the surrounding cast of no players, he's still getting it done. He's not a person who's turning the ball over and blaming it on his offensive line. He's one of the most sacked quarterbacks in recent history. He's been sacked over 60 times in 2 seasons. That's absolutely ridiculous. But he still manages to take care of the ball. Daniel Jones isn't getting sacked 60 times a year. Why is he fumbling the ball 30 times in 2 seasons?
He's getting sacked a lot. I think he was sacked.
He's getting sacked a lot now.
Yeah, his first 2 years, he was sacked 83 times.
But we're not talking like Randall Cunningham or Deshaun Watson. Randall Cunningham got sacked 72 times in one season. Deshaun Watson got sacked 64 times in one season and came back the next year, and I think he was sacked 58 times. So for me, it's just I've run out of excuses for Daniel Jones. I had a homie who told me you're never going to win it with Daniel Jones. And I was like, I argued with him to the death of it last season. I was like, nah, the kid's got the skill set. He's got this, he's got that. But 3 years into your career, we can't be waiting on potential to develop. This is the same thing we did with Evan Ingram. So for me, I had to just look at it realistic. I can't keep being pessimistic with a team that is only putting up 5-6 wins a game
optimistic.
And optimistic, sorry. And a quarterback is still looking really bad. And it was a breath of fresh air to see him start the year pretty good this year. But then when it unraveled, it's completely unraveled. And I'm one who thinks that Daniel Jones will be here next year. He probably will be here next year. But we got to find a way to build the pieces around him if we think he's going to be the quarterback moving forward.
Yeah, and to get back to the draft, that's the way I feel, is exactly what you said. If you do not feel there's a transcendent quarterback in this draft, you either A, stick with Jones, or B, go the stopgap route. I'd probably prefer just to stick with Jones and build up the surrounding roster, specifically the offensive line. And I'm going to say that until my head falls off on YouTube, until the New York Giants fix it. You have 2 first-round picks in this year's draft. If, say, you're picking top 3, top 4, top 5, and there's a team that wants to come up and get a quarterback, that would be ideal for me. Say the Bears are picking 12, and we're picking 3, and you trade down to 7, and you could double up on the offensive line, get an additional second-round pick, get another future first-round pick. That is setting it up beautifully for me, because then you have future first-round draft capital. If need be in 2023, you decide to move on from Jones, you could come up and get that said quarterback with those 2 first-round picks. But for me, in this year's upcoming draft, I'm not thinking quarterback unless I feel that there is an elite talent, which more than likely, in my opinion, I probably will not feel that way. So I am fixing this roster. I'm getting 2 hogs. That's what I'm doing. And we need an edge rusher as well. Don't get me wrong. But my goal if I'm a general manager of the New York Giants, is the first thing I got to make sure of, my most important player is situated properly, and that's the quarterback position. And if I have the ability to shore up this offensive line with 2 high-end talents on the offensive line this year, I'm doing it. And I'm done. I'm done with waiting. I'm done with people telling me, oh, you look what the New York Giants did in 2007. They had an undrafted guy. They had a second-round guy. They did. But conventional wisdom tells you, obviously, you have a much higher probability of getting a very talented offensive lineman if you draft them earlier than not. And I am sick and tired of waiting for them to try to find a way to get this to work. I am using those picks and fixing what the problem has been. And the main problem has been on this football team for 11 years. And that's the offensive line. That's what I'm doing in this year's draft.
1,000%, man. And we knew it going into this season. We knew this offensive line was garbage. Shout out to my homie Miz, who literally was scared as ever going into this season with this offensive line. He just kept saying in every chat he was in, we need O-line, we need O-line, we need O-line. And the Giants go out there and do the opposite. So for me, yeah, you got to go out there, bring an offensive line. Daniel Jones can win games if he's got the right pieces on that offensive line. He showed the Saints game was a beautiful performance, but that's the only game where you really.
If he can't, the next guy will be able to.
Yeah, and it'll be serviceable. You know, you won't be dealing with 5 wins and 6 wins in a season. You know, if you could just beef up that offensive line. The Giants have not been able to run the rock for like 4 years. You know. Since 2018, we haven't been able to run the rock.
They weren't able to run the rock then either. I mean,
they really weren't. It was a bunch of big plays from Barkley, and that was about it.
Yeah, even the year that we went to the playoffs, that was a year where we had no identity that year. Our identity was throw it to Odell Beckham and hope he breaks a big play.
Right.
That was our identity. That's not an identity. That's hoping to get lucky and spring 1 or 2 big plays throughout a game. There's no consistency there. There's no unpredictability. We have not had an identity for years. And the only way we're going to get an identity is if we fix the freaking line.
Got to fix the line. Got to. And I see somebody talking about DJ in the red zone in the chat, too. That's another thing. When you can't score in the red zone, I don't care what you do from 20 to 20. You got to find ways to put the ball in the end zone. And I'm one who has gave DJ a lot of excuses because you could break it down from the first 3 games. I remember I went back and I looked at every red zone attempt. They were 1 of 3 for 4 straight games, right? And you look at them, there was always a mistake on the offensive line that set us back, put us at 2nd and 21, 2nd and 20. You know, Nate Solder missing a block. There was the one where Billy Price and Ben Bredeson were looking like their shoelaces were tied together, and Daniel Jones gets sacked. Now you're just looking at another 2nd and 18 from the, you know, when we start these red zone possessions on the 6, on the 7-yard line. So when you get down there, you got to find ways to cut out the mistakes, and those things aren't on Daniel Jones. Those things are around the pieces around him. But I promise you, a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, somebody break through that line, he's got the wheels to get out of there. And that's why I don't like people calling Daniel Jones this mobile quarterback, because when things really go wrong up front, he's not going to make some crazy play to get out of it.
I think the best way to I guess, like, in terms of his athletic ability, his running ability, he's not elusive. He's fast.
He's fast. Straight up, he's fast.
And I think the biggest reason when you watch a lot of the film when Daniel Jones breaks a big run, I think the biggest reason why he does it, he sells the RPO so well with the fake, and it opens up a lane. Like, he's not a guy like you're saying, like Lamar Jackson, like Michael Vick, like Steve Young, like so many of these other great mobile quarterbacks of the past that they can make something out of nothing. That's not what he is, and that's fine. I don't need a quarterback that could do that. But
exactly, we don't need a quarterback that could do that.
But he's not. He isn't that type of player. I agree with that.
And could you imagine what the RPO would look like if we actually had some decent hogs up front and a running game? Oh, my God. Then you could start doing those things, and they would be even more disguised, and he would look even better when he's running the ball. But, you know, as far as Daniel Jones, like, developing a RPO offense around a guy like that when this offensive line is looking the way they look, that's on the coaches. And they're not putting him in the position to succeed. He's been struggling pretty much for, you know, 2 whole seasons now. Last season for Daniel Jones is one of the worst seasons I've ever seen out of a quarterback. How do you only put up 12 touchdowns?
It's bad. And I think a lot of it had to do with the offensive philosophy, too. I don't want to put it all on Jones. I think they handicapped him in terms of, you know, intentionally playing conservatively.
Which that goes back to that whole definition of how you define franchise quarterback, you know, for people in the chat and for anybody else. I define franchise quarterback as the guys that when things are going wrong, they can still make plays. And Daniel Jones ain't that guy.
Not right now, at least. Bill, man, thank you very much. He says, even after Gettleman is gone, we are still stuck with Chris Mara and his disastrous player personnel department. Scouting has been terrible for years. John ain't going to fire his bro. Well, you know what, Bill? You know, and I don't want to I know a lot of people are now turning it because obviously the relation to Mara, they don't want that. And I don't think we should have that, to be completely honest with you. They got to fix it. They got to start thinking outside the box. They can't keep doing things the way that they've done them. Period. End of story. And the only way, maybe he stays, whatever, but the only way they're going to fix this is if John Mara says, here's the keys to the next GM, have at it. I'm not going to tell you need to do anything. This is your decision going forward. That's it. That's the only way we're going to have sustained success with this football team. Because if you handicap that guy, one, you're not going to get the best candidate, because the best candidate is not going to come to a situation where the general manager says this guy has to be your head coach and this guy has to be your quarterback. He's not coming. You're not going to attract the best minds to this football team if you do that. So Mara has got to give the guy free reign.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. You know, we just got to you can't pick little pieces that you want to keep from this.
Yeah.
Just clean it up. Completely clean it up. It's that time. They have had enough time to be able to make this look good. It looks awful. It looks worse today than it looked when Dave Gettleman got here.
It's bad. It's bad. I'll say that right now. It's if it's not worse, it's equally as bad. It's bad.
Because, Tanner, man, that 2018 season, I always tell people this. We were losing a lot of games. But as a fan, I had a lot of fun. I'm going to keep it funky with you.
Well, over the course of 2018, we got better over the second half. We should have won 7 out of our last 8 games. We only won 4. But you had the Colts game where we gave it up at the end. You had the Cowboys game where we gave it up at the end. You had the 63-yard field goal. So the team did get better over the course of the year. But I don't think it should have been that fun, to be honest with you. I think that's the year that we should have blown it up, and we didn't.
Truth. But it was still, I still looked forward to watching New York Giants games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Point where you're not even
and right now, I'm like, man, after that Rams game, I'm like, I clocked out in the second half of the Rams game. I was barely paying attention.
We were down 28. We gave up 28 points in the second quarter. I mean, come on.
And if they go out here with this game against Carolina, and that, you know what's so crazy about last week's game was that was the anniversary of the 2011 Super Bowl, and they got everybody in the stadium, and you got people leaving at halftime.
Yeah, it's bad.
You know, it's just ridiculous.
The optics are bad, man.
Yeah.
Joel says, Els from Twitter. Els is the man, dude. Love the show, guys.
That's my
Did
fan.
you guys consider Eli Manning a franchise quarterback? Also, what can Jones do better to become a franchise quarterback? I know Authentic didn't, because I listened to his show the other day. I do consider Eli Manning.
Oh, no, I thought Eli was going to be a guy. You know, you got to think about it like this. One, he was a Manning. Okay, so I'm going to revert all the way back to 2004.
He's saying after the fact, not like before, after the fact.
Oh, after the fact, yeah. I mean, you look at Eli Manning, if you remove the Super Bowls, he doesn't look like a franchise quarterback, but that's the thing. We can't remove that. We cannot remove Eli Manning's clutch playoff performances, the best playoff performance probably from any quarterback in NFL history.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'm going to say, man. Eli Manning, for the first half of his career, was a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
He didn't have a losing season from 2005 to 2012. And yes, he had a good surrounding roster, but he didn't have a losing season. And like you said, when it mattered most, he put the team on his back. The guy in 2011 had the most fourth quarter comebacks in NFL history in a single season.
Yeah, Eli was that guy. You know, that clutch gene, there's not a lot of guys that have that like how Eli got that. And my thing is, like, a quarterback doesn't have to be able to do it all. He doesn't have to be able to run, be able to be mobile, to have a deep pass, you know, where he can throw it 70 yards down the field, be able to have the greatest pocket presence. But it's about an accumulation of characteristics that make you who you are. And Eli, you know, the first couple years were ugly. You can't forget he lost 7 straight games at, you know, his rookie season.
His first year was horrible.
It was bad. But then he came back out, and it was like, I got to use my eyes first and foremost. And Eli passed the eye test. I'm like, he does everything right. And, you know, that Super Bowl was just confirmation for me. And from that point on, I was like, yeah, you could look at Eli as a franchise guy, because when he got into the playoffs, that's all you had to do. Get him 9-7, look pretty average, pretty decent during the regular season. Get him into the playoffs. He going to win you all those games because he got that it factor. He's got that winner in him.
Nothing phased him. Nothing phased him. And here's what I'm going to say about Eli, man. Yes, regular season statistically, I mean, he had his years. Like 2015, he was second in touchdowns. 2011, he threw for 5,000 yards. Like, he definitely had good statistical seasons. And he always, you go back and look, the New York Giants offense was always top 10. They were number 3, actually, in 2005 with him at quarterback. Of course, Tiki Barber helped that with the running game. But the offense was always good when Eli Manning was at quarterback. But the thing that the intangibles, when the game was on the line, I don't care if it's playoffs or regular season, with 2 minutes to go, when Eli had the ball, even early on in his career, you know, you think back to the Eagles game in 2006, you think back to the comeback against the Denver Broncos. When Eli had the ball in his hand with 2 minutes to go, you had full faith that more often than not, he's going to get the job done. And
Yeah.
to me, that's a franchise quarterback.
For sure.
Stats to me are overrated.
They are.
When the game matters most, when the game's on the line, when you need your quarterback to get the job done, can he do it? And yes, Eli Manning was a guy that I had more confidence than most quarterbacks in the league when the game was on the line in the 2-minute drill, could orchestrate a drive down the field, whether it was the regular season or whether it was the postseason, to get the job done. And from 2005 to 2012, like I said, he did. And then after that, the team was a complete and utter disgrace. And once we were paying him that kind of money, he could no longer do what he once did because the team around him was horrible. But for the first half of his career, yes, I think Eli Manning was a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and the quarterback position is very circumstantial. It's like you got to have the right pieces around you almost in every scenario. I do think Patrick Mahomes is a franchise quarterback, but if you were to take him out of that Chiefs offense and bring him over here to New York, would he win games? I don't know. Maybe not, to be honest. But I think a lot of it has to do with what's around you. And what they kept around Eli Manning for almost all of his career was a solid running game.
Yeah, for sure. They built the team so much better for Eli that nobody would ever debate that. It's not even debatable. And in terms, and I think the second part of his question is, what can Jones do to become a better franchise quarterback? I mean, listen, man, I'm not going to completely close the door on Daniel Jones. What I worry about is I just don't know if it can happen here because I don't have faith that the New York Giants could support him with the roster necessary for him to show those traits that Eli was able to show. Yeah. Eli was giving the support system. Daniel Jones right now has a lack of imagination in terms of an offensive coordinator. He has no offensive line. Let's be fair. Eli Manning had a good offensive coordinator. Gilbride came from the Houston Oilers with the run and shoot offense. Warren Moon was great. He had a much better support system with his coaching staff, Tom Coughlin, his offensive coordinator, his offensive line, his running game. Daniel Jones has none of that. So what I fear is he just doesn't have the support system. So he's not Aaron Rodgers. Eli Manning was not Aaron Rodgers. Eli Manning wasn't close to Aaron Rodgers. No, very few quarterbacks are. And Dak Prescott's not close to Aaron Rodgers, but he could win football games, and he's a very good quarterback. I'm not trying to discount Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's been set up properly. Daniel Jones has not. And if we don't get to that point, which at this point, I can't tell you that I could defend. I don't think we will by the time we have to come to the conclusion of whether or not we need to give Daniel Jones an extension. I think it's going to be very hard to distinguish whether or not he could potentially be a franchise quarterback if you gave him the support that a guy like Eli Manning had.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of points you said there. Going into this season, I said the evaluation period for Daniel Jones was over. Anybody still trying to evaluate a quarterback this far into their career, I just think that's like, it's just not. It's not easy to think like that. For me, Daniel Jones is the kind of guy that you can win games with a quarterback like that. You go back and look at every team that's been in the Super Bowl. Look at the Rams. They were winning games with Jared Goff. And I think Daniel Jones can be a better quarterback than Jared Goff, 1,000%, to be honest. But at the same time, you got to put him around the right surrounding cast. And I talked about this earlier. Dave Gettleman failed Daniel Jones. When you only draft Darius Slayton.
He failed Daniel Jones before he drafted him. And I just want to speak on this before I forget. It's what I wanted to say at the top of the stream when I'm like, we'll talk about Daniel Jones later. Daniel Jones, the reason I flipped out as much as I did when we drafted Daniel Jones had less to do with Daniel Jones and more to do with the fact that I knew the second we drafted him, he wasn't going to succeed here because I knew we were miles away from being able to support him the proper way. And it's 100%. Probably going to be the same thing I would do if we drafted a quarterback this year. Obviously, I'll be more reserved and I'll be like, I got to give this guy a chance, but I'll feel the same way in my heart. I'll be like, I just don't see how this guy's going to be able to overcome the obstacles his first 2-3 years in the league. And in the NFL authentic, all you got to do is look at the numbers. There's only been 3 quarterbacks that have won a Super Bowl when they took up more than 10% of the team's cap. That's Eli Manning, that's Tom Brady, and that's I think it's Peyton Manning. There's only been
that's kind of what I wanted to get to as well too, is that quarterbacks need to take that Tom Brady motto and start applying that. Right now, if there's a Giants fan who feels comfortable paying Daniel Jones a big contract, I don't know what to tell him. But Daniel Jones is the kind of guy that if you see what's happened to these quarterbacks in the past, like the Marcus Mariotas, like we talked about, Jameis Winston's, these guys who struggle, have issues with their game. Jameis Winston had issues with the turnovers, but let's not forget, he's one of 6 quarterbacks to throw for 5,000 yards. He had 33 touchdowns to go with the 30 picks, right? So he's got something good going there. But these guys got to learn to take pay cuts like Tom Brady. Tom Brady right now is making up only 5% of the cap space with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Crazy. I didn't even know that. It's only 5%.
That allows you to bring in all these guys that they want to bring in and boost up all these players around you. And what's that going to do for you? That's going to make you look like you are a franchise quarterback. So back to the homie Super Chat, what he was saying in the beginning about what Daniel Jones could do, I think he could start by trying to take a pay cut when it comes time for him to make the money.
If he's going to be here long term.
If he's going to be here long term, because otherwise he's not going to be here long term. Let's just keep it funky.
Yeah, I agree with that. Stan, man, thank you very much. Andrew Luck was a franchise quarterback, and look what happened. I completely agree. Andrew Luck is the definition of a franchise quarterback.
For sure.
Because Andrew Luck went into a situation probably equally as bad as the Giants. The Colts had the #1 pick. He brought him to the playoffs his first year. Yep. And throughout his entire career with the Indianapolis Colts, they supported him with nothing. You know, I look at the Indianapolis Colts. You want to talk about a team that had a golden opportunity and they blew it. You point straight at them. Andrew Luck was the definition of a franchise quarterback. I don't care what people say. He lived up to the billing. He just got no support whatsoever. He found ways to win games and overcome the limitations on his roster, but he never even sniffed the Super Bowl because the Indianapolis Colts did not know how to build a football team. And by the time that they started to build it properly, he was already damaged goods because he took so many hits to his body. But Andrew Luck was absolutely a franchise quarterback. The Colts just didn't support him properly.
That's a good point you bring up right there. And he's a quarterback that will be forgotten, you know. But he had some really good years on some really bad teams, and they failed him. The organization failed him. And I think his career was only like 6 years, 7 years, because he was just taking too many hits. And in Daniel Jones' case, it's just when you start seeing these turnovers start to pile back up. I thought the turnovers were long behind him. But then when you don't got the right supporting cast around him, it shows you kind of why he was turning the ball over the way he was in the first place.
Yeah. And Tuto, he says, everyone's missing the point that Mara was the one who hired Fat Getty 5 years ago and planted the bad seeds, produced bad plants with rotten fruits. I don't think many people are missing that point at this point. It's just that you can't fire Mara. Gettleman's the guy that you got to fire, and Mara's the only reason why Gettleman's here. So that's why I always blame Mara the most. But yeah, I think most people realize that Mara's the guy that is most to blame. But you have to hope as an organization, much like as a Knicks fan. Like I've known my entire life, authentic, that James Dolan has been a horrible owner. He's been a guy that was short-sighted. He made decisions and didn't think about the long-term success of the basketball team. It's the same thing. And Dolan, at least it looks like, the last 3 or 4 years has started to learn from his mistakes. And you have to hope as a fan that Mara does the same thing.
Yeah, they deal with it here in Washington all the time. I mean, I think Washington probably has one of the worst owners in the game, and Dan Snyder, all the scandal, everything that's going on, and you just got to deal with that. I can't force the guy to sell the team, you know. You can pray that something bad happens to him, you know, maybe a situation like Donald Sterling or something like that to maybe get him out of town, but it's not looking like that's going to happen anytime soon. So you just got to deal with that, and you got to just pray that he could bring in the right GM and the right coach. I mean, he's failed now in two GMs back-to-back and 3 coaches back-to-back.
Rick says, salute to my 2 favorite Giant content creator. I'm sure Authentic appreciates that, Rick.
Definitely.
Our scouting department needs a complete overhaul. We can't hit on our late draft picks. Thoughts? Yeah. I would change everything, Authentic, if I could. I mean, I would change the scouting department. I would change the towel boy. I would change the water boy. It's not working. Yeah, have we hit on some? Sure. Like Tate Crowder. It's a good pick. I mean,
I like Tate Crowder.
He was Mr. Irrelevant. To get anything out of him, that's a good pick.
Yeah. Darius some tackles last week too.
Darius Slayton's a good pick. 5th round pick. To get anything out of him, that's a good pick.
Yeah.
But overall, you're absolutely right. I mean, our late, or it does. I don't care if it's late or early. For the most part, they haven't worked, and I think the biggest problem, though, Rick, more so than anything else, is just the team's philosophy on how to build a football team. That to me is the bigger problem, more so than anything else. The scouting department, everything, their philosophy has been backwards for so long.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when you look at some of the players that we've drafted, you just scratch your head. Just like, what did y'all see in Kyle Lauletta? You couldn't just use your eyes and see that guy wasn't going to be a pure franchise quarterback, since we're talking about that. Corey Ballantyne. You know, like, just so many players out here that I'm just like, what did y'all see in them? Darnay Holmes, who looked to be pretty decent last season, barely getting out there this year.
Lorenzo Carter didn't work out.
Zimenez.
There's so many picks you could point to that, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks that just haven't worked out.
Yeah.
Mike says draft O-line in this O can be prolific if healthy.
I think you on that.
Mike, what I will say, if healthy, and that's the big if, and I'm sick of saying if healthy, because when you look on this roster right now, Saquon Barkley, if I'm being honest, how confident am I in him that he could stay healthy for 17 games? Kenny Golladay, if I'm being honest, how confident am I that he could stay healthy for 17 games? Andrew Thomas. How confident am I based off his first 2 years? Daniel Jones. So, yes, I completely agree. If everything is perfect and we stay completely healthy and you do fix the line, that this offense could get the job done. But if we're being honest, how many times has Daniel Jones had a full repertoire of weapons since he's been with this football team because they can't stay healthy?
Yeah, not a lot. And that speaks to the GM and to the coaching staff because, look, if you look at the Tennessee Titans right now, who are predicated on the run, they were just dealing with both of their starting wide receiver studs being out, and they're still at the top of the division right now with 4 wins. So when we're talking about healthy, we can't just think about the starters. We got to think about the depth. Who are the guys that come in when the starters go down and the productivity doesn't have a drastic drop-off? This offensive line right now with the injuries, it looks like you're looking at college or high school football, the way that they're blocking. The drop-off is so drastic. When you got guys like Dante Pettis out there at wide receiver, when you lose 3 of your 4 wide receivers, Dante Pettis had 11 targets last week. What the hell are we doing?
Yeah. Well, the offensive line, we were scrambling before the year started to find any depth on the offensive line.
Right.
And I guess like my analysis on the Giants is they have, at least going into the year, I can't really say they have many strengths right now, but going into the year, I thought they had certain strengths on the team, but where it mattered most, they were not strong. And that's what I'd say about the Giants right now. And they lack depth in the most important areas on a football team.
Yeah.
So they got to get much
trenches.
better. Sam, man, thank you very much, man. Can we give Gettleman one more year? It looks like we might have our franchise quarterback, left tackle, and wide receiver. Injuries messed up the season, not Gettleman. Listen, I do think there's some validity to what you said. Like, yes, Gettleman's had bad luck this year, for being honest.
For sure.
I mean, yes, every player is getting hurt on this football team. But no, I don't think there's no way. There's no way I could see the New York Giants giving Gettleman another year. The fan base is obviously going to want their pound of flesh, rightfully so. Being that we went into this year with I do not see the only thing I could see them doing is staying with an in-house GM, but it will not be Dave Gettleman. That will absolutely not happen. I don't see any scenario where that could happen.
Yeah, I don't see Dave Gettleman coming back either. And, just with the draft picks that have failed and the development of players, there's something wrong between Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge. So for me, it's, I'm going back and forth. Yesterday, I said Joe Judge is probably the one to blame the most because he's the one that's out there who's really running this. Dave Gettleman went out there and got some players. I wanted Kenny Galladay in the offseason. I didn't know he was going to be injured, 5-6 weeks into the season. And I wanted us to get a wide receiver in the first round, even when we had the earlier pick. I had my eyes set on Devonta Smith for sure. And Kadarius Toney has seemed to work out. Andrew Thomas has seemed to work out. Gettleman has done some good things. James Bradbury in year 1 looked really good. Logan Ryan looked really good. Blake Martinez looks like a really good signing when he's healthy, But as far as I think the biggest problem with the Giants is the drafting to development. That's the biggest problem right there. These players aren't getting better, and then the players that he's drafting, they're not producing for us as depth pieces on this team. You got these guys going out, and now we just look like a totally different team because we got a couple wide receivers out and a couple linemen out, and to start, that line wasn't that good anyway. So for Dave Gettleman to go into the 2021 season and not address the offensive line, knowing that that's a major problem, I don't think we could bring him back next season.
And you lost your most accomplished lineman with Zeitler.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was a vital mistake on his part. Tyler, man, thank you very much. Thoughts on Joe Brady for head coach? Joe Brady was a guy that I liked coming out of college. He was an innovative mind, and he's seemingly done a pretty good job with the Carolina Panthers. I don't watch all their games, but yeah, I've mentioned him as a guy that's a potential hiring candidate for the Giants. I want an offensive mind. So sure, if the Giants were interested in him, I'd be okay with it. That's the type of coach that I want.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. Just want a little bit more proven. I really think we got to go out there and get that. The Giants need to find their Mike Tomlin.
Former head coach. That's what you want. You want a former head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like Harbaugh, for example.
Harbaugh.
He had success in the NFL as a head coach, and now he's coaching in the college ranks. But a coach like that is what more so is your lane.
Yeah.
And Nikki Sapp, man, thank you very much. Fish swears we are getting Belichick. I want Dabble, if anyone. I'm honestly okay with giving Joe Judge another year. Stop the constant turnover. I believe in Danny. Hey, man, I'm not, I understand. There's definitely parts of Danny where I do believe in my heart, and it's what I said when the season started. If the team is equipped properly, where I do think he could be a good quarterback in the NFL. So I'm not going to fault anybody for having their beliefs about him as a quarterback, and anybody has to recognize that he's been put in a hell of a situation. As far as Belichick, I think that'd be a horrible idea. Bill Belichick, how old is he now? I mean, he's what, 70 something
He's
years
up
old.
there. He's up
I,
there.
I don't want Bill Belichick. I don't. It would be similar to what the Knicks did with Phil Jackson when they brought him in to make personnel decisions.
Oh, yeah, you got experience with that. I'm not a Knicks fan, so yeah, you definitely got experience with that. I wouldn't mind Bill Belichick, just simply because he's proven, he's one of the better coaches, maybe the greatest
He's just not
head
a
coach of
long-term
all time.
answer. I don't. I mean,
But
of
the
course, I'm not going to
innovation
cry
is
if we
not
get
there
Bill
with him, I
Belichick,
feel
but
like,
I just
too.
I don't think that's the avenue that we're going to go down. If Bill Belichick was ever going to be a part of this organization, I think it would be the front office. I don't think it would be a head coach.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And what he's done lately with the Patriots is very puzzling. They built that team around a 2 tight end system. They went out there and spent $50 million on Jonnu Smith, and he is barely getting targets right now. Seems like they tried to build that team for Cam Newton, and something might have went wrong somewhere underneath the hood there. And then now they're forced to go to Mac Jones, and they also have a really bad offensive line over there. So that's why they're struggling. And I cannot handle bringing in another head coach who's not going to address this offensive line.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see ultimately which way they go if they decide to move on from Joe Judge. But
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it was Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Let's get to. I'm not gonna be able to pull up all of these, but I think this is the last one, and I'm gonna read the rest over here. Thank you to everybody, by the way. I just obviously have a guest on, so it's hard for me to say it throughout the stream. And of course, thank you to Authentic. If you guys have not done so, link in the description below. I've worked with Authentic before. I'll definitely be on his channel again in the near future.
For sure.
Please subscribe to Authentic and the Beard. Link in the description below. But thank you to everybody for being here. And hopefully you guys are getting some, I don't know, relief from this stream, us talking about some of the problems for the Giants, and maybe almost acting as a therapy session. But I appreciate everybody for being here. I will be live later if you're a Knicks fan, probably around 7:15. But I appreciate everybody that's here, man. And JD's the man, by the way. He was on the channel last night talking Knicks with me. He says, what a blast last night. Ready for tonight. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Great guy. He's got a great channel over there as well. I want to talk more Knicks with him in the future. He's just setting up for the pregame. Yeah, he's at the game today. Hopefully you have a great time with Knicks Fan TV. Knowledgeable, sharp guest. He's talking about Authentic. Who is the most disappointing player thus far? Ooh, that's actually a really good question because there's a lot of disappointing players. I
go JB.
You going Bradbury? That was that was the first name that popped in my head when I was going to say it. I'm going to take a coach, actually. I'm actually going to say the combination of Joe Judge and Patrick Graham have been the most disappointing part of the team for me so far. But if I got to pick a player, I think Bradbury would be definitely.
Well, what about Kyle Rudolph?
Kyle Rudolph, yes. I didn't think he'd have an immense role, but he's done nothing.
Yeah, he's done nothing.
Rudolph's a fair one as well. In terms of importance, though, I think Bradbury's a bigger letdown for me as a fan because he's not near what he was last year. And maybe some of that has to do with the team. And maybe it's a combination of both him and the scheme in terms of, regressing a little bit as a player. That's a good one, though. I think I'd agree with you on that. I think it would be Bradbury.
Barkley's up there, too, and it's not necessarily just because of the play, but just, falling into that whole category of being injury prone. And, it's just unfortunate with him. But didn't Dave Gettleman draft CMC in Carolina as well?
He did. He drafted McCaffrey.
I mean, you look at that. He drafted both of those running backs, and they're both injury prone. It's just nuts.
I think that's kind of a little bit of bad luck. It's not like Barkley had any injury history in college. I just think it's bad. It's a position that just typically has potential injuries.
And not pairing them with that other back, man. That's the thing about availability.
That is fair.
You have a durable running back when he doesn't have to take as many carries. I was one in the offseason that was saying this. People were like, oh, we can't wait to get Saquon Barkley back getting like 20 carries a game. And I'm like, nah. Like, Barkley should be getting like 12, 13 carries a game, and they should have another running back out there doing some damage being that bruiser running back.
Yeah. I think it's a great point that you brought up. They brought in Booker, but Booker has not gotten the job done, man, at all. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Zigman, thank you very much. Not only Gettleman didn't draft O-line, but then he let Tomlinson and Zeitler walk, weakening both lines at the same time, and it's showing a lot this year. Yeah, that was so puzzling to me because this was a guy that up until this year that you could at least say about that was something that he valued, right? A lot of people say, well, he didn't draft offensive linemen and he didn't pay attention. That's not the case. He signed Nate Solder to a mega contract. He traded for Kevin Zeitler. He drafted Will Hernandez relatively early. He drafted Andrew Thomas. He drafted Matt Baird. He drafted Shane Lemieux. On the defensive side, in terms of the line, he drafted Dexter Lawrence. He traded for Leonard Williams. So he did, pay attention to the trenches early on in his career. But for him this year to completely neglect it, and not only neglect it, Zig, but let two of the most influential players on those lines go and not replace it at all whatsoever was definitely concerning before the year started and definitely puzzling.
Yeah, it definitely was, and it goes back to Gettleman overvaluing other players, guys like Kenny Galladay. You paying him this major bag. He's almost making as much money as what they were signing Odell Beckham for. I think it's $72 million. Odell was like 90, and it's just unfortunate, man. Like you got to be able to assess the players that are key pieces on both sides of the ball, and all Giants fans know Dalvin Tomlinson was definitely that. I could take you all the way back to Snacks. Snacks was that, and I was surprised when they let Snacks go too. So it's like I guess they think that you can easily replace these players in the trenches like that, when in reality we know it's not easy to bring guys in the trenches that are really those alpha players, those dogs that
And
you
if
really
you're
want.
gonna do it, at least try to do it. He didn't draft anybody.
Yeah,
To replace. He just assumed Austin Johnson could step in and duplicate what he did, and obviously that hasn't worked.
yeah.
You
BJ
know?
Hill was drafted in 2018, and it's been bad. RJ McIntosh, we just miss. We just miss.
And Canody, man, thank you so much. And he's a member. I want to shout him out as well, but I'm reading an old super chat. Stand up, new member. Welcome to the squad, Canody, man. I see in Authentics chats all the time as well. He says,
Yeah,
what's
that's
good, fellas? Loving this collab. Worried for DJ this game. Panthers pass rush is the Panthers defense. And I don't watch a lot of Panthers games. At least the first 3-4 weeks of the season, the Panthers defense was really, I think they're the best defense in football before the Cowboys.
They were ranked 1 for a few weeks. I think they're ranked 5 now.
Yeah, so they definitely have a good defense. And without Andrew Thomas, my God, just say a prayer. I mean, without his weapons and Andrew Thomas, again, I think it could be a tough day for Daniel Jones, man.
Yeah, it definitely could be. But I think that the Panthers were a little bit overrated, coming off that 3-0 start that they had. I think we should be able to compete with them. We're 3-point dogs in that game. If they come out and they fall flat like they did against the Rams, and I know the Rams are a really good team. Rams are a team that you could possibly see in the Super Bowl, but Giants can't fall flat like that. I think if they fall flat like that on Sunday, man, I think
changes.
Yeah, Gettleman and Joe Judge will probably be out of here.
I wouldn't be shocked. Like if they have another showing like 38-3 or whatever it was, 38-11, I wouldn't be shocked at that point. And let's see. Christopher Spires says, what do you think about Doug Peterson, ex-Eagle coach? I want to give my opinion on that, actually. I think, and I was never a big fan of Doug Peterson when I watched the Eagles games, but I think Doug Peterson was a scapegoat for the Philadelphia Eagles. There is no way in hell, Authentic, and I want to get your opinion on this. There is no way in hell that Doug Peterson went into that final game the last year without getting owner's approval to go out there and tank that football game. Because if you're Doug Peterson, what is the advantage to you tanking that game other than potentially damaging your future career with the Philadelphia Eagles as being a head coach? And I think he was used as a scapegoat by the organization after the media came out and they destroyed the Philadelphia Eagles for losing that football game when he was fired and they had no choice. But I never thought that was Doug Peterson's decision. I thought that was ownership's decision. And I think ownership gave him the go-ahead to do that and gave him the confidence that he would be back as the head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I want to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, Doug Peterson actually a few months after that game came out on a podcast. I was surprised that it wasn't bigger news, but he definitely insinuated that they said that Sudfeld had to come in the fourth quarter so that they could assess him. I believe it was the third year of his contract, so they knew that they were going to let him go in the offseason. They wanted to see what they got in him. As far as Doug Peterson as a coach, I think he's a decent head coach. He's showing better vibes this year, but he struggled to run the ball with Miles Sanders just as bad as Sirianni is this year. So, not the kind of guy I would want to be a candidate for our team for sure, but I mean, he's a decent head coach.
Yeah, here's my issues with Peterson, at least when the times I've gotten to watch him. And I know he won a Super Bowl. I personally think a lot of that had to do with the fact, one, he had a great team. Like they were built in the trenches beautifully. And they had a great supporting cast in terms of the coaches. Frank Reich being the offensive coordinator, I think had a lot to do with that team's success that year. I think he's a great offensive mind, Frank Reich, and I think the Colts got themselves a good coach over there. But as far as Peterson goes, the one thing that I've seen that I don't really like about him, and I'm all for analytics in terms of a tool, to me, he's too analytically driven. Like he goes for 2-point conversions like at any point in the game. I don't know. And some of his decision-making, like you said, his misusage in terms of running the football, I was not a fan of Doug Peterson when I watched him with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and he looked like in 2020, like he clocked out. Like he was just like, it's a wrap for this.
Well, him
I'm not going to try to salvage this.
Fights and stuff,
right?
Like it was a mess, man.
And you remember like the players, it was very surprising to me that they brought back Zach Ertz because I remember like at that last game how the players were just like standing out on the field and they stayed out there for like extra hours and whatnot. Kind of just says a lot about the culture as well. Now, I wouldn't want to take a risk on a guy like that.
Yeah, I just don't see that being a great match. Bill says, Chris Mara is John's brother. He's been running player scouting for years and done a terrible job. We are stuck with him. Yeah, I don't think they're going to fire him if I had to guess. I mean, you just have to hope that the guy they bring in, improve, hopefully helps build the team. But I don't see Chris Mara going anywhere anytime soon. John Mara's not going to fire his brother. I'd be surprised if that was the case, unless maybe the fan base demands it and maybe it happens. But I don't think that'll happen. I don't. I'd be surprised if it does, Bill. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Brian says Joe Judge let Ryan Conley walk, and he could have been a solid step in for Blake Martinez. BJ Hill gets traded for Billy Price, and since he clearly won. Yeah, I don't know how Conley's done since he's left the Giants. I know we traded, rather he signed with Minnesota.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he's got an opportunity to play, to be completely honest with you. I don't know how he's done. Conley looked pretty good with the Giants. I don't know if he was the same player after the injury. That's very hard for me to say. I think that's ultimately the major reason why he was cut, because Conley did look pretty good for the Giants in the 4 games that he got an opportunity to play. And he probably would have been a solid backup linebacker. But I don't know if he was the same player coming off the injury, which is why I think they ultimately cut him. As far as Hill goes, yeah, obviously the BJ Hill trade we lost. And the reason we lost that trade, I still understand why they made it, because they were so desperate to get depth on the offensive line, and they probably felt like BJ Hill wasn't going to play too much here with the Giants, and they weren't going to retain him after this year. So I understood the trade. The problem with me is that it should have never come down to that point. You should have drafted your depth on the offensive line, and you wouldn't have had to trade BJ Hill.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the overspending on Nate Solder, you could go all the way back to that. Just missing on assessment on trades and on, players that we're bringing in the trenches. Most importantly, I think they did a decent job of, skill position, bringing in skill position players, but they're just missing in the trenches.
Yeah. And Arch Manning says, I will be the Giants franchise quarterback. Hey, you never know, man. You got a ways to go before you'll be here. John says, Iowa offensive lineman Tyler Linderbaum, and we need 2 solid running backs. I miss the word Jacobs and Bradshaw. I miss the 91, 92, 72 D-line.
Speaking my language.
Era. Let's build that back. John, man, I'm with you, man. I don't know if I want to draft 2 running backs in the same draft, but I would definitely be completely open to drafting a running back in, say, the 4th or 5th round. A guy with some potential for sure to help build up the depth in this running back core. As far as Linderbaum goes, I don't know if you've gotten – I know you're not a huge college – I'm not a huge college guy either, but I've had my eye on him authentic because a lot of people have pointed him out to me. Iowa was the number 2 team in the country, and he's the best player on the team. He's a center. When you watch the guy play, he is a beast. He's going to be a top 15 pick in this year's draft, which is uncommon for an interior offensive lineman. But if the Giants have an opportunity to take Linderbaum, say at 10 or 11 or whatever it may be, I'm all aboard the Tyler Linderbaum train. They need interior presence on that offensive line. And the center position's a lot more important, I think, than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I mean, you got to find a way to bring those dogs in here, man. That's why I like Nick Gates so much. He was one of those players I feel like, he wasn't the strongest, fastest kind of lineman. He wasn't the best out there, but he just had that dog in him. And we got to find a way to bring those kind of players in on the offensive line and especially the defensive line. We need to get back to them Justin Tuck, those O.C. Umenyiora, those kind of vibes where our defensive line was a major presence. Right now, that on the edge, we've been non-existent. It's kind of ridiculous.
Justin Tuck so much. Justin Tuck's my second favorite Giant of all time. I love Justin Tuck so much.
Yeah, Tuck was a beast. JPP, I mean, just so many great Giants defensive edge rushers that we had. And interior, man, we had some dogs too, man. Just got to get back to getting them dogs out there. Those players that put fear in other players' eyes. You want those edge rushers that the quarterback always got to glance over at him and make sure that he's taken care of.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just looking up the time of the game tonight because I know I got to eat dinner before.
Sure.
Okay, the game's at 7:30, so I'm okay. We can hang. I want to get to all these super chats. Ignacio says, in my opinion, one of the biggest mistakes we have done as an organization is building a foundation. Tana, we don't have any. Oh, I think you meant to say is not build a foundation.
Yeah,
we don't have any depth. All good teams out there have depth. I agree. I mean, you look at the Ravens, like Authentic was saying earlier, they've had so many injuries, yet they're able to overcome it. The best teams in the league, they draft properly, and when guys do go down, inevitably in a sport like football, especially now with a 17-game season, they're able to find ways to overcome it. Of course, there's going to be instances like when Dak went down last year. You're not going to be able to overcome that. But
right.
but when you're able to build a proper football team, you can overcome injuries at the majority of positions on a football team. The Giants are not one of those teams.
Yeah, and you look at last year, even the Cowboys had a pretty bad season. They lose probably their best player on offense, and they still won the same amount of games the Giants did. And we kind of coming out of last season feeling pretty good about ourselves. We made a little late season run there, 6 wins. Everybody leaving 2020 kind of felt good about Joe Judge. But when you see those same kind of problems continue to leak over into the next season, that's when you start to lose hope. And the Cowboys are a team, like you talked about, they built that team the proper way so that if the quarterback did go down, they could still compete in a bad division like the NFC East.
Yeah, which is crazy, man. And John says, I was 21 when Gettleman got hired. I'm 25 now, and I'm terrified I may be in my 30s the next time we're good. I'm horrified. It might take 5 or 6 years before this team is like legitimately good, where we could go into every year thinking this is going to be I'm with you. I hope I'm wrong. Like, I want to be competitive next year. I want to be competitive this year. But realistically speaking, like, if they do this the right way, it's going to take a little bit of time. Like, when you draft offensive linemen, Authentic, you can't just expect these guys to step in and be incredible. It takes a couple of years for these guys to build continuity and grow as a unit, but you need to start sprinkling the seed somewhere. You need to start having them start to grow as football players, and it's got to start next year.
Yeah, which is why I'm all for doing it like how the Rams did it. Combination of draft and combination of trading away sometime those draft picks to bring in young players that are already proven, that have already made that step now. They're past the developmental portion of things, and they can get out there and start making plays immediately. And then you combine that with some young players around them that are still developing and some good, like, not quite veteran presence, but some good players that have some experience in the league, guys that are in that Leonard Williams kind of tier, and then maybe this rebuild can happen a little bit faster than, we're expecting it to be.
Yeah. Hopefully, and the one thing I will say, optimistically speaking, if you get the right guy, you see the Cardinals had very little to work with. Yeah. Obviously, Kyler Murray helps, but they flipped it around real quick. So it can happen, but you got to get the right guy in here, and you got to build the team the right way.
I saw somebody say, go back to the 4-3. Please. I can't stand the 3-4 defense. I hate it. I would love to see us go back to that 4-3.
I wouldn't be against it. Man. The Gorn says the game is won at the line of scrimmage. Fix the O&D lines, and the rest will follow. Just like the selection out of New York Deli, you start with the gabagool. What's going on, Gorn? Man, thanks for popping in. But yeah, I mean, that's football 101. The game, the game changes in terms of that it's a more explosive league. Teams throw more, but it's still the same game. You still win in the trenches. Yep. That affects everything. The name of the game is to protect your quarterback and get after the other quarterback. And to make your offense less predictable, you have to be able to do both run and throw. So, and to do that, you need to be able to block. So you're absolutely right, man. In the trenches is where games will always be won and lost in the NFL. Yeah,
and you got to understand what the running game can do for a quarterback. Running game is a quarterback's second best friend. O-line is probably his first best friend. But if you get a running game going, there's so many different things you can do off play action. There's so many different things you could do off RPO. And the offense will just be able to click and move better. And it starts with the trenches. You look at how the Dallas Cowboys ran zone right against the Giants defense in that last game, it was pitiful. They just kept running it to the right. Their offensive line kept getting pushed. Ezekiel Elliott couldn't be stopped, man. And that's the kind of offense I want to see, because then your quarterback don't got to do as much. You just kind of simplify things, just like how the Browns are doing for Baker. And the Browns, if Baker can stay healthy, the Browns can still win games. But they don't need like a world-beater quarterback out there to really do things, because they got all the other pieces in place.
That, to me, is what you should strive for. I completely understand the mindset is we need the next Pat Mahomes. But Authentic, if you're being realistic, what is more likely? You finding the next Pat Mahomes, or you building a team like the Browns did, like the Cowboys did, and having a good quarterback being able to step in and succeed? Quarterbacks like Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers don't grow. They're not a dime a dozen.
Right.
So to me, every organization should strive to build the team the right way, which, like you said, is to pay heavy emphasis on the trenches to maximize the potential of your skill position players.
Yeah, straight up facts.
And Bearman, thank you very much. We need to fix the line first and get depth. I think before we get another quarterback, or else it's going to probably be the same thing. He's going to struggle. Give Daniel Jones another year. I'm completely for that, Bear. I'm not. I just feel bad for Daniel Jones that he's going to be used as a punching bag by the fan base. Much like Eli Manning was over the last 7 or 8 years of his career, we couldn't get this thing situated. But if I was the GM, I would not be rushing out there to get a quarterback and put him in this spot.
Yeah, I'm with you.
NY Giants 26 says Miami might get Watson today or soon. Reports. Really? Huh.
They need it because they don't got a franchise quarterback over there, as well. Tua's over there struggling.
Wow, I would assume he probably can't play this year still with everything that's going on, but I guess he'd be a part of the future of that franchise. Word man, thank you very much. Just listening and lurking in the chat. Great stream. Always appreciate that, Word man. Great supporter of both of ours. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Big shout out to Word.
And Xerox says, hi, Chris. The Giants are breaking my heart. I would love for us to get Baker Mayfield. I know fellow fans may disagree, but that guy has some heart.
He does got the heart, and he does try to win games, but I think he's limited with his physical skill set.
Yeah, I and when Mayfield first came into the pros, he's like the type of player when he first came into the league, he's very hard not to like because like you said, he's got that aura about him. He seems like he's got that leadership ability. But when you watch Baker Mayfield play, to me, and I've said this in several of my streams, you put Baker Mayfield on the Giants, I don't think he's doing much better than Daniel Jones.
I think it'd be a lot worse. I said it earlier. I think Daniel Jones is a better quarterback.
He's a limited quarterback to be Baker Mayfield. I'm not a fan of Baker Mayfield.
And if you look at Freddie Kitchens, I want to say that was Freddie Kitchens that was over there the rookie year for Baker, and they had
both years,
both of them. So they had weapons, but when they got Stefanski, that's when you really saw them start to click. He found a way to just go, we're going to rely on this identity of our team. It's going to be the running back. It's not going to be our quarterback throwing the ball down the field. I don't care what wide receivers we got. And their offense looks like a Pro Bowl type team. I mean, they have depth everywhere. They got 2 tight ends. They got 3 solid wide receivers over there. So it's all about just staying healthy. And you got to have depth, man. I think you made a good point earlier about now that it's a 17-game season, the emphasis on depth needs to be even higher.
Yeah. For sure. And with Thursday night football too. And, it's not like the way it used to be, it's just, you need depth. It's inevitable that there's going to be injuries on your football team and you need strong depth in the NFL. Mike, man, thank you very much, man. Stick with Joe Judge and Daniel Jones. Get a GM, cut a deal that year. One is a pass with Daniel Jones and Joe Judge. Draft O-line and let's see what happens. GM gets free reign in 2023. See, Mike, I am not bringing in – the only way that is conceivable for me is if you hire from within the organization. I am not going to limit my hiring candidates if I'm looking from outside the organization to handicapping them to have to stick with Daniel Jones and Joe Judge. The only way that makes sense to me, and I could see the Giants going that route, especially if the Giants win 6 or 7 games, is having almost a 1-year sample size of trying to hire from within and trying to push forward with this and seeing if this team could grow. But if you're bringing in an outside GM authentic, that to me is one of the silliest things you could do because if I'm a GM, think about it. Take your Giants hat off. If I'm a GM, why the hell am I going to take a job when the owner tells me you've got to keep this head coach and you've got to keep this quarterback? Those are the 2 most important pieces of a football team. If I'm a general manager coming from the outside, you're not telling me what to do if I'm taking that job at those spots.
Right. That's 100%. I mean, do you think that there's any way that they could salvage next season? Any possible way? I mean, they've spent all this money. There's not a lot they can do to unload contracts, but is there a way that maybe you piece this offensive line together and maybe get some help in the trenches and this team could get back to competing?
I got to see the rest of the year before I could conclusively say one way or the other on that. I got to see the rest of the year because we have had a lot of injuries and maybe my opinion of the team will change at year's end. And but right now, I'm leaning that we need drastic changes. That's where I'm leaning. And maybe my opinion will change. It's why I don't try to be a reactionary fan. I know a lot of fans want me to be that way. I know, but to me, it's a game where your opinion could change so much week to week. But I got to be honest with my opinion. At this point in time, I'm definitely leaning that I'm leaning that massive changes are needed, and we cannot keep doing what we've been doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. There's like one little lingering miracle thought in the back of my mind. If we could go out here and win this game on Sunday, maybe beat the Raiders, you sweep the Eagles, you finish out splitting with Washington and splitting with the Cowboys, and you beat the Bears and you beat the Dolphins, you can maybe salvage this season. But with all these injuries that we have lingering over this team's head, I don't see it happening, but we'll see. I mean, I think Sunday is a very important day for the Giants. If they go out there and shoot themselves in the foot, then, they're going to be looking at blowing this thing up. I'm already on board for blowing this thing up. It's not looking right.
Yeah. And Darian says, bro, Daniel Jones had one bad game. Like what? I don't think, I don't even think Authentic's that way either. I don't think anybody is blaming Daniel Jones for why this team is the way that they are. That's the problem with this team is our organization is so inept that we set our players up to fail. And Daniel Jones is 101 with that. Saquon Barkley, same thing. Like we set our guys up to fail, whether it be coaching strategy or just not having the proper pieces around them. I don't think Jones is the reason we're 1-5.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
you on that.
I don't. But I think what Authentic sees, and I think it's very fair to say at this point in time, is Daniel Jones is not a guy, which most quarterbacks are not. I want to continue to say that they could take a bad situation and elevate the football team.
Yeah,
On,
Daniel
on, a,
Jones is one
on,
of
a,
the
on a,
best players on this offense,
yeah,
hands down. But at the same time, you can't put all this weight on that kid's shoulders. He's not that guy right now. Maybe in the future he can be that guy, but right now he's not that guy. He's proven that he needs things to be like, I won't say perfect. I know they like to say that about quarterbacks. He needs things to be perfect around him. He's not like a Rex Grossman or nothing crazy like that. He's got talent. He's got a good arm. He can, he can run the ball a little bit. He's pretty fast. He's a bit agile. For me, I've always said this about Daniel, man. He's got all the skill sets that you want in a quarterback. He's got everything you want. But at the end of the day, if you can't hold on to the ball, there are a lot of other quarterbacks out here that they get hit and they don't fumble, So that's something that he's got to find a way to clean up. He did that in the first 3 to 4 games. But now you're looking at back-to-back games where Daniel Jones, when he doesn't have the help and he doesn't have the wide receiver core on the field that cost all this money, he's looking very, very average.
Yeah. And John says, I agree that DJ isn't a franchise quarterback, but he came out of Duke. Look at what he had at Duke compared to Bama quarterbacks and what they are used to throwing to. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why when you evaluate, I laugh, by the way, Authentic, at people who evaluate quarterbacks based off of statistics in college.
Yeah.
Statistics to me mean absolutely nothing in college. Like a quarterback who plays for Alabama or Oklahoma, of course, they're going to put up much better numbers than a quarterback that plays for Liberty or Duke. So it means absolutely nothing in terms of evaluating players because, yes, a lot of it has to do with, just like in college and in the NFL, a lot of a quarterback's success has to do with the surrounding talent on his football team.
Yeah, and Daniel Jones, I can remember when I was doing some scouting on him and what's his name, Dwayne Haskins entering that draft because I really wanted to see from those two guys who's the better quarterback. I still got those notes on my phone, and I remember looking at that and being like, yeah, Daniel Jones is the better quarterback, but the one thing that surprised me about his college tape was he had a lot of drop passes that he threw to his receivers on his highlights. They were showing you highlights where they're dropping the ball, and I'm like, man, that's very rare. And I think when you think about a franchise guy, and this is why I really had a lot of faith in Eli Manning. Like coming out of college, he was that dude. These guys go through their whole life being that dude. So they just continue that momentum when they get into the league. Where a guy like Daniel Jones, you go to Duke, you struggling, you barely got, I don't even think he had a winning record over there. And then you come into the league, you're kind of used to losing already, and sometimes it's good to have that arrogance, especially in sports, to have that confidence to be able to be like, it doesn't matter what's happening around me, I can go out there and make those plays. And Daniel Jones just seems to his thoughts seem to scramble a little bit when it's time to really get down in the nitty-gritty and make those plays.
Fair. Alphabet says, well, DJ has problems and has to protect the ball. You might want to look up some quarterback fumble leaders. Warren Moon and Brett Favre both have well over 150. Well, for sure. Tony Romo had fumbling issues his first 2-3 years in the league. Tom Brady actually had a fumbling issue his first year in the league. There's now 3 years, but yes, listen, at the end of the day, we're not winning it. To me, even if, and in my heart, I do believe Daniel Jones could be a good quarterback. I'm going to continue to say that. I do believe he can win good football. He could win football games on a good team, but unless this team is going to get good before the conclusion of his rookie contract, there is no way that you could extend him. There is no way. Because how in the world could a smart GM say to himself, I'm going to pay this guy now a second contract and give him a raise when we couldn't win when he was eating up almost nothing on the salary cap? It just doesn't add up. Right. So it's unfortunately not everything in the NFL is fair. Unfortunately, not everybody is given the ideal circumstance. Not everybody is put in a situation to succeed. And the New York Giants failed Daniel Jones. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and Saquon. They failed them miserably. Yeah. They didn't put no talent around them early on, and now they're scrambling in a panic right now. They did that in this offseason, just trying to, okay, we're going to just take one offseason and throw all these weapons out there. We're going to draft one. We're going to pay one. We're going to bring in a new tight end. We're bringing in all these people, all these little pieces. We sign a running back on the first day of free agency, and now it's looking like none of it worked. And Dave Gettleman and them are just running out of time. And as fans, are we supposed to just sit back and be like, yeah, feeling optimistic and go, we'll give him another year? Like, I don't know if we can do that, especially with the coaching staff and with the GM.
Yeah. And RB Brooklyn says it's not fear Mahomes comes to a perfect situation, weapons, and great coaches. Even Herbert had a true one wide receiver, a running back, and a tight end. Just look at the coaches Jones is playing for, the worst run organization. So, yeah, RB Brooklyn, I don't think anybody is blaming Daniel Jones for why this team is as bad as they are. I don't think anybody is blaming Daniel Jones for that.
I mean, I think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback right now.
I don't
It's
think
just
anybody's blaming Daniel. Like that's why I flipped out on draft night. It was because I knew that he was going to fail because this organization was nowhere near being able to support a quarterback.
yeah.
It's the organization much more than Daniel Jones.
And you want to feel optimistic when you got, a lot of turf in front of you. You're looking at I gave Dave Gettleman so many passes. If you pull up my receipts on Twitter about Dave Gettleman, I was giving him so many passes, man. Like, just give him time, give him time, give him time. That clock is ticking now, and they're running out of major time right now. And unfortunately, that's going to hurt Daniel Jones. And it's gonna kill me to see Daniel Jones go to another team and ball out. It's going to kill me.
Yeah, and I think he could if he was in the right spot. Stanton says G-Men didn't make excuses for other quarterbacks in 18-19. Trying to think what you mean by that. G-Men didn't make excuses for other quarterbacks in 18. Obviously, we had Eli Manning in 18-19.
Maybe he's talking about the draft, maybe the players that were in the draft in those years, or I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I don't know what he means by that. But I will say is that Eli Manning was used as a punching bag his last 6 or 7 years with the Giants. There was a wide portion of the fan base that blamed him for everything. And I
see some Tua talk and Watson talk in the chat. I don't know if that went down.
Tua got traded, really? Tua to Washington.
I wonder if that really went down. Did that go down?
Tua to Washington. Maybe it's a rumor. A lot of people are saying Tua to Washington.
A lot of people are saying that. I gotta look into that when we get off, man. That'll be very interesting. Me and the Beard might have to go live immediately off that news.
Tua to Washington. That's real.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that.
Wow. That's interesting. I'll tell you what. I'm not happy as a Giants fan, to be honest. I'm not a huge Tua fan. I think Tua could be a pretty good quarterback, but Washington is, I think, a pretty good spot. People
are saying many reports Tua might get traded there. Somebody said fake news, so maybe it hasn't gone down yet.
Okay.
But
I think that's a pretty good spot for Tua if he's going to become a good quarterback to succeed. If they could get things going over there, obviously their defense has been underwhelming, but that's an interesting. If that goes down, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Miami definitely needs a quarterback, though. They're just a quarterback and a couple other pieces away from really competing. I mean, they're probably one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL. I want to say they were 10-6 last season, and now they're just looking like straight up garbage.
Yeah, I actually called for Miami to be the most disappointing team in the NFL this year, but I didn't think they'd be this disappointing. I thought, because a lot of people had them winning like 10 games, 11 games based off of that they were building, and they had 10 wins the year before. I thought they'd have about 7. I didn't think they'd be 1-5 and losing to the Jaguars. Like, they've been so disappointing this year.
Yeah, they've been struggling.
Let's see. NY Giants 26 says, let's cut the BS. Build the line. Once that is done, get your quarterback, get your receivers, get your running back. G-Men stacking weapons with no line. Couldn't have said it better myself. NY Giants 20. It's football 101, man. The objective in football and in any sport should be to try to get the most out of your players. And you're not going to be able to get the most out of your players if you don't fix that.
Yeah.
John, man, thank you very much. DJ has shown me enough this year when he has time to throw. He makes good decisions. Offensive line legit gave the kid 0.5 seconds last game. A GM he shouldn't have played. A game he shouldn't have played.
Yeah.
I agree that he's shown enough to warrant another season. If you're not in love with the quarterback in this year's draft, I agree with that. I don't think he's proven enough to be a franchise quarterback.
And even if you draft a guy, let him compete. I heard a lot of Giants fans in the offseason that were scared to bring in better quarterback talent as the backup because they're like, they don't want to mess with DJ's head and all this. It's like, man, if you've ever played any sports, when there's somebody who's pressing you to try to take your position, that's when you elevate your play. And Daniel Jones has not been challenged. They've given him the keys to the car the whole time he's been here. I mean, even when they said they committed to Eli Manning for the year, 2 weeks in, Daniel Jones is in the game. He's never had any pressure. They just handed him the keys to the franchise saying, you're the guy. Where I think maybe if you challenge him a little bit, bring in a guy, I think that people were thinking about Jameis Winston in the offseason, Cam Newton a little bit, bringing somebody that's going to challenge him, man, because maybe that'll make him a better quarterback. And if that has to happen in the draft, then so be it. But, I said at the beginning of the year that Daniel Jones got 2 more years. I'm going to give him the 2 more years. So I think he'll, in 2022, he will be our quarterback. But that doesn't mean that the Giants aren't going to go out there and maybe draft a guy if they see the one they want.
See, me, if I'm me personally, if I'm sticking with Jones for another year, which I'm completely for, because I don't want to reach on a quarterback and I don't want to force a quarterback into a bad situation. Yeah. If I'm going to bring in a guy to compete, I would actually rather go the free agency route, not draft a quarterback. Because I wouldn't want to use my early draft capital on another quarterback until such time I felt like the roster was built properly.
Well, I'm totally for that, which is why I say, if you see that guy in the draft, if
Yeah, well, if you see that guy in the draft, then you're rocking with him. But
yeah, because what's my man Tim from Online Big Blue? He's been just hammering Malik Willis. He's been just saying Malik Willis, Malik Willis. And if you think like that, and you think that's the guy, you got to go out there and get that guy.
I agree with that. If you feel like that guy could be a franchise-changing quarterback,
yeah,
you take the shot, but you better feel that way.
yeah, you got to feel that way. And if not,
If
yeah, you
you're
go
wrong,
to free
you're
agency
setting the
route.
franchise back 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
So you got to feel that way. Alvin, man, thank you very much. Franchise quarterback stat: Josh Allen, his career red zone numbers: 199 passing attempts, 49 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 25 rushing touchdowns. That's insane. Holy crap! I love Josh Allen. He's one of my favorite players in the league. So you're telling me 1 out of every 4 of his passing attempts in the red zone are touchdowns, and he hasn't thrown a pick?
Yeah, he's lighting it up.
That's insane. Wow. Wow. And obviously his ability to run definitely helps him from within the red zone, much like a guy like Lamar Jackson, who's also great in the red zone.
And Josh Allen is one of the only quarterbacks who really does it without a running game. I know they got back to the run a little bit more this year with Moss.
He is
but last season they really were not running the ball at all, and in the playoffs it really showed. And I think that's why they couldn't get far in the playoffs. But yeah, Josh Allen today he's looking like a franchise quarterback for sure. I love the signing of Emmanuel Sanders over there. He's looked great in that offense.
Yeah, he's been good there. And the quarterback I always compare Josh Allen to, and even before he got good, is Cam Newton. I think they're so similar. I think they're so similar in terms of their skill set.
With probably a better arm too, with a more precise, more accuracy out of Josh Allen now. I know coming into the league, accuracy was definitely an issue for him. And you saw it in the first 2 seasons with the 52% completion percentage and then 58. Yeah.
But I actually think he's got a better arm than Newton, and that's saying a lot because Newton had a big arm.
He did.
But I think in terms of their skill set, I think they're very similar.
For sure.
Independent man, thank you very much. Can we please build a pass rush? We got to do both. We got to build a line and a pass rush. But yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau is a guy that people frequently talk about. If you feel like you got a generational edge rusher, you take him and you build up the offensive line with your other first round pick. But yeah, for sure, we definitely need those are the 2 biggest needs right now. And we need a middle linebacker. But then I'm gonna tell you that right now because I don't think Martinez is gonna be back next year coming off the injury, and he's a lot against the cap. We need a linebacker. We need a coverage linebacker. That's a big need for this team as well.
Yeah, that would help the secondary out a lot, man. You see him trying to bring Jabril Peppers down in the box, covering these tight ends, these running backs. He's been getting burnt all year, and I think that you almost got to upgrade every position. I like Kadarius Toney. I like Andrew Thomas. I like Daniel Jones. I like Aziz. Outside of that, man, I don't know, man. I like Leonard Williams a little bit too, but outside of that, we got to find a way to rebuild this.
1 second on that. I'm gonna be right back.
Yes, sir.
You talk to the chat for a second.
I got you, man. I saw something in chat that I definitely wanted to respond to just a second ago too. My man, the Illa NYG was saying, is Allen the same quarterback without Stephon Diggs? And I was one of the people that was definitely saying Josh Allen is not a solid franchise quarterback at first, but I think you saw the flashes in the first 2 seasons. Granted, he was wildly inaccurate, the first 2 seasons, but as soon as he had Stephon Diggs over there, completely changed. I said this earlier in the stream too. He hadn't had a game with 300 yards passing in his first 2 seasons. And then he got Stephon Diggs, and he came out the gate with 3 straight. So, yeah, Stephon Diggs is definitely a major, major, major tool and asset to Josh Allen. But I think every quarterback needs that A1. You need that premier wide receiver. You need a number 1 guy, and you can work off that. I mean, I like to think, imagine if Aaron Rodgers had a number 2 wide receiver over there. That's why I think they need to trade for somebody. Bring in a number 2. They'd be even more lights out. That offense would be super high-powered. They're winning some close games this year that I feel like they should be blowing teams out like the Bengals. But every quarterback's going to need an A1 wide receiver. So I don't think that Stephon Diggs is reason to take away that Josh Allen is a franchise quarterback or not.
No, you look at most quarterbacks around the league. Pat Mahomes got Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Rodgers. Like most quarterbacks are going to have that. I don't care how good they are. They usually have the premium wide receiver.
And I think Lamar Jackson's probably the only one who could do it without a pure number 1, but that's because of the running ability that he has, man. He's
basically a running back that can throw. That's what he is.
I think he's like 6th in rushing now in the NFL, and he's top 10 in passing. Lamar Jackson does it all. Led the league in passing touchdowns a couple years back. He can do it all, and he's looking like he's getting even more accurate.
He's a different breed. He's a different type. He's a hybrid basically. He's like Vic, essentially.
Yeah.
Talking Ego, man, thank you very much. His hindsight 2020, Shermer should have got another year. Hey, Talking Ego, I made a video on that, and people killed me for it when I did. But I was of the mindset that he should have, and it wasn't because I thought he was a good coach. It was, for the obvious reason. If you were going to allow Pat Shermer to draft a quarterback to fit his scheme, if you knew you were going to fire him if you won 4 games, you shouldn't have let him draft that quarterback. So I thought when you did that, you put Daniel Jones in such a bad situation. I was of the mindset that, yeah, they should have pushed forward with Shermer and Gettleman for 1 more year. And if it didn't work, you blew it up the following year. And then this year would have been the start of the rebuild had it not worked. But I agree with that, Talking Ego. I would not have fired Pat Shermer after 2019 for that reason and that reason only. I would have used James Betcher as the pound of flesh.
Yeah, Pat Shermer, I think he deserved a little bit more time, too. He just looked a little bit wrung out at the end of that season. And I also think Ben McAdoo, man, Ben McAdoo's dealing with what Joe Judge is dealing with right now. In his second season, he dealt with a ton of injuries, and they pulled the plug on him. We can't forget he had that 11-win season. I think they could have gave him a little bit more time. And I know the Giants thought that they weren't going to have to rebuild, and they thought that they could put a Band-Aid on it real quickly and fix it by getting a new head coach, and then that didn't work, and then we really fell into a panic.
Yeah, and now it's just been recycling coaches after recycling coaches. Pimp named Slickback says the biggest thing about Jones is the financial portion. Of course, even if he has a good year next year with 30 touchdowns, 15 picks, do we pay him over $40 million? I say no. It would depend. For me, a pimp named Slickback, it would depend on how the rest of the team look. But right now, looking at the team, I don't see the team being to that point by next year. And even if it is, it would be based off of luck that all these guys could stay healthy. I just feel like we need too many pieces for the future. I would not be super confident at this point in time. And maybe my opinion will change at year's end. But I agree, man. The best opportunity to win a Super Bowl in today's NFL is having that quarterback on the rookie window.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're throwing that away if you at that point, if you give Jones that extension. The Giants are in a really tough situation, man, and it sucks because we did not build this team the right way.
Yeah, there's one portion of me that almost hopes that like Daniel Jones just kind of plays average ball throughout, and the Giants bring him back. And re-sign him for a lot less.
That for me is why I've been rooting for Daniel Jones more than anything else this year. Is that exactly? I just don't think it's the ideal time to go and draft another quarterback. I'm praying that Jones is good enough to get that 4th year, and then I obviously hope he builds off of that. But I just don't think it's the right year to make that transition.
Yeah, I feel you.
And not say, man, thank you very much. Don't do what the Jets did. Keep Jones, build around him, please, and get rid of the trash. Yeah, listen, man, and listen, I was actually a fan of the quarterback that the Jets drafted. I still think he could be a really good quarterback.
Yeah, same here.
But they put him in a situation from hell, and it's no different. And he comes in there, they're 1-5 with a lucky win against the Titans, and the Jets don't have much of a glimmer of a hope going forward. So you got to fix the team around him. It's a team sport. It's a 53-man sport.
And Darnold managed to get some wins over there too. I want to say
3-3, I think, with Carolina.
That last season he won a couple, right?
He had a winning record with the Jets in 2019. People forget that. He was 7-6. He missed 3 games due to mono. He had a winning record with that.
7 wins. Yeah.
And
I like what he's doing in Carolina, man. He's shown that he's more mobile than I thought too. I like how he maneuvers in the pocket. He led the league in rushing touchdowns entering last week, which was crazy to me. But he's doing some things. But he is up at the top of the league in giveaways right now. Him and Zach Wilson and Patrick Mahomes are all tied for second with 9 giveaways right now.
Yeah, the one thing, and again, I would never compare him to this good of a prospect, but I did see, like, a lot of people compared Darnold to Andrew Luck when he first came in, and I saw that sneaky mobility when he came in. I said, I could see it a little bit. Darnold does have sneaky mobility. He's more athletic than you would think. Jeremiah, thank you very much, man. Great show today, Chris. Love the Authentic's awesome. Authentic's been a subscriber of mine forever. Go over there, check. He does a fantastic NFC's podcast, and he does a Giant show as well. Go over there, check him out. Link in the description, man. He says, love the guest. He knows what he's talking about. Going to help me get these posts driven before the snow hits in Alaska, brother. Yeah, Jeremiah, Alaska, man. I can't imagine living in Alaska, man. I'm not into the cold weather like that.
Like my imagination of Alaska is just like mad snow all year long. I got to go out there and actually visit, man, to really see what it's about. I'm thinking like polar bears and penguins when I think about Alaska.
Well, I know there's a time of year in Alaska where it's like dark, like 20 hours out of the day.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy to me.
That would be really crazy. Yeah, I definitely got to make a trip out there sometime, man.
And Eddie H, man, thank you very much. Dave Gettleman failed Daniel Jones by hiring a head coach with no head coaching experience. Well, it's not just that. I mean, yeah, I mean, you could point to that, but I mean, there's several. Like you look at Stefanski, he had no head coaching experience with the Browns. It can work, but for me, where Jones was failed point blank, it goes back to the Shermer decision. As soon as they did that, I was like, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
As soon as they did that, and it's why I didn't want to do it. I'm like, he's in trouble because you're already switching schemes. The offensive line's a joke to begin with. As soon as they did that, it was set up for it had disaster written all over. And then when you factor in the pandemic and everything else, and him not having the ability to learn the new scheme properly in his second year before it started, it was a disaster. It had disaster written all over it, man.
Yeah, and I'll date it back to Eli's last year too. You know, when we signed Nate Solder for Eli's last season, or really his second to last season, you know, that offensive line made a turn for the good at the end of the back half of that season. I remember we signed I want to say it was Brown and Pat Omama, and you saw them improve, and they learned how to block for Eli a lot better. Nate Solder, some of his best play with the Giants was during those last 8 games. And then you come into the following season, you drafted Daniel Jones early, which I thought was a little strange when you committed to Eli. They should have just let Eli finish out the year, I feel like. You know, just let him, especially for what Eli did with the franchise, just let him play out the rest of that. I believe that was 2018 season.
You're hitting the nail on the head for me too with that.
And Daniel Jones could have sat.
I got killed for that too. You know, when I came out and said that I don't know necessarily that I thought that Eli should start the whole year. And obviously I looked dumb after the first start when he played the Bucs, and Daniel Jones looked great.
Right.
I thought it was why in the world would you bring Eli back and bench him after 2 games when you could have Daniel Jones sit and learn for 8, 9, 10 games during the regular season? You completely lose that benefit. And don't tell me that it can't be something that could be vital and imperative in terms of the growth of a young quarterback. Look at Pat Mahomes. He didn't play his entire first season.
Yeah, and look at what it did for Saquon Barkley. You know, like there's that interview that went around Twitter for a while there with Mario Manningham and Victor Cruz talking about the importance of their careers relying on Eli Manning at the line. They would have meetings on Fridays where Eli would talk about different things that they should look for in the game on Sunday. And Eli Manning, that first year with Saquon Barkley had like 91 catches. He set him up for great running lanes, great check down plays. It didn't look that great, but Eli Manning was really good pre-snap. We see it with Daniel Jones now. I think Daniel Jones, I watched the Saints game in my studio, man, on my speakers, and you could hear Daniel Jones at the line really good. And, like, he's doing all kind of stuff at the line now. The checks that he's making, everything, you're starting to see it. But at the same time, it took Daniel Jones a long time to get there, whereas if he could have just sat that first year and watched a little bit longer, I think it would have been, you know, a more benefit to his career for sure. And now we're starting to see it. Giants kind of running out of time now because Daniel Jones was kind of learning on the job with a bad team.
They completely mishandled Daniel Jones in terms of setting him up, in terms of putting him in too early, in terms of switching offensive coordinators. Everything that you could do wrong for a young quarterback, the Giants did it.
Yeah.
A pimp named Slickback, man, thank you very much. Next GM shouldn't dump everyone with a question mark. I was fine with moving on from JPP and Pugh because I thought they would draft replacements, replace in the draft, or keep them around. Yeah, I think it's circumstantial. Pimp named Slickback. I don't think you replace everybody. You know, the younger players, there's no reason to replace Xavier McKinney. There's no reason to replace Kadarius Toney. There's no reason to replace Andrew Thomas. There's no reason to replace, Azeez Ojulari.
Right.
You know, I think it's circumstantial, but if you are trying to reset this roster and build it in your, you know, the way that you want to build it, if you could trade away Adoree Jackson, you do it. If you could trade away Kenny Golladay, you probably do it to set yourself up to have freed up cap space to build the roster the way in which you want to do it. So I think it's circumstantial. I don't think you get rid of everybody. I think you try to keep the young players and hope that they mature and grow as players. But if you're a new GM coming in, I think you're selective in terms of the decisions that you make. But if you feel like there's a good trade out there for a player that, and this is, of course, if a GM completely from the outside, if there's a good trade offer for a player that you don't really view is going to be here when this team gets good, I think you listen.
Yeah, and I mean, I think guys like Kenny Golladay are going to be hard-pressed to try to find a trade for a guy like that.
I agree.
Coming off the injury, and especially if he can't get back out on the field and really show that he's still got some ball left. I don't know what happened to Brandon Marshall after that 2017 season where he got hurt. I think it was pretty much done, you know, a wrap for him there. Not saying that Kenny Golladay is anywhere near the age that Brandon Marshall was at the time, but I don't know what team would want to take a risk on a guy like Golladay right now. with what he's put on the field
And what he's
as a New
making.
York Giant. And the money is the number one thing, to be honest.
Yeah,
And
man.
then Adoree Jackson, I really don't know. I hate when the Giants pay guys big money that I really haven't heard of. And
Yeah, I remember you saying that on your stream. I was laughing.
yeah, man, like Adoree Jackson's a guy that I never really had heard that name until we were interested in signing him. And then when I see the amount of money you're signing him for, it's like, this guy better come in here and be a really good player. And that has not been the case. Just using my eyes, man. He seems like a player who plays a little bit soft. He doesn't he's not willing to put his helmet in there and make hits. Even that 2 games ago when he got banged up in the game and he had to get walked off the field, he ended up being okay. But it was because he was being real timid on the tackling. I see that from Xavier McKinney at times, but that's okay for a younger player like McKinney who's just learning. I think he'll learn a lot from Logan Ryan. But Adoree Jackson, they got to find a way to maybe get him out of here if things don't improve.
Yeah, I think he's more tradable than Golladay is because it's only 2 more years on his salary, on his contract. Galladay's got another 3. And Adoree doesn't have, even though he does have some injury history, I don't think it's as rampant as Golladay.
Yeah. Eli Apple was a trade to the Saints, right?
Yeah, we got like a 4th-round pick for him or something like that.
Yeah, so if he can get traded, then Adoree Jackson can get traded for sure.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a guy that you could see being traded next year if we bring in an outside GM.
Yeah.
Jeff, man, thank you very much. Shout out to Evan Authentic on the channel. The conversation is amazing. Thoughts on offering top 10 offensive coordinators, the GM, top 10 OCs, the GM job promotion? Well, Jeff, anytime Authentic wants to come on, he's always more than welcome. He's awesome. As far as offering I'm assuming you mean a top 10 offensive coordinator, the GM job? Me personally, no. I'd want a top 10 offensive coordinator to be my offensive coordinator, my head coach. If I'm bringing in a GM, I want a guy that has field office experience. That's what I'm looking for in terms of a GM candidate. Not necessarily an ex-GM, but somebody with some field office experience, whether it be an assistant, whether it be a scout, whatever. But I don't think it would be an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that.
And NYB, man, thank you very much. Fact is, we need Eric Bieniemy for head coach. And NYB's the man, man. Dan, I know I'm going to see you for the Knicks stream, man. Thank you so much for popping in. All right, I want to get your opinion on Eric Bieniemy because I know it's like such a hot topic. Obviously the main thing is the minority coaching in the NFL. That's always a hot topic, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people have talked about that they feel that Bieniemy hasn't gotten a job because of that. But I could point to, you look at Cuddy with I think that's how his last name with the Texans. He's an African-American. He got the job in which Bieniemy they thought would get that job. So part of me is like, I don't know if that's what it is. Part of me is like, is it just because this guy doesn't impress in interviews? Is it because that they feel like he doesn't have the credentials necessary and they feel like it's more Andy Reid than him? I'm not saying that there's not a problem for him within the NFL. I understand that I think there's only 3 or 4 minority head coaches currently in the NFL. And I know that that's like a hot topic. But what's your thoughts on Bieniemy?
I think the number one problem with Bieniemy would be that he doesn't call the plays in Kansas City.
That's for me too, man.
Yeah, the proof, you need that proof, I feel like. If you're right now, if you look at the Dallas Cowboys and you're looking at Kellen Moore, we know that he's calling plays over there, so I think you can see that. With Bieniemy, I also think that it could be, we don't know what happens behind closed doors, so maybe it could be a money issue for something to really drag him out of Kansas City because he's in a fantastic situation. When Andy Reid turns the reins over to somebody else, if Eric Bieniemy is still there, I'd look for him to be probably the main head coach candidate over there with the Chiefs. So maybe there's something that's causing a little bit of barter and they can't come to an agreement. He didn't even seem like, when a lot of the coaches were being hired in what season was that? 2020 with Joe Judge, the first season. Matt Rule was around there, a few others were there, and you could see they were almost on like a press run of interviews. And Eric Bieniemy seemed to be the one guy who really wasn't getting as many interviews. And I don't know if that is a thing because of him or if that was a thing because organizations weren't reaching out to him or what. But, I think he's pretty comfortable over there. If I was him, I would totally be just waiting for Andy Reid to call it quits and try to take that job.
I completely agree with you on that. And I think a lot of people said he turned down jobs. If I'm Bieniemy, Andy Reid's not a spring chicken. He's not going to be there forever. Why would you not just wait to be able to coach Pat Mahomes?
Yeah. You got to think about a winning team and all that. Most teams that need a new head coach are bad teams. You're going to go to a bad situation. You could tarnish your whole coaching experience and career by one bad job.
Yeah, if I'm Bieniemy, man, and maybe Reid's got 3, 4, 5 years left, unless something blows me away, I'm being like, I'm comfortable here, man. I know, I know I could be the coach in waiting, and I got Pat Mahomes. So he may not be in a rush to get out of there either, So that's a good point you
Yeah,
bring up.
I'd be chilling if I was him. And you talking about the Chiefs, as long as Patrick Mahomes is there, that they could be a dynasty.
Yeah, exactly. And Asia, thank you so much for popping in the stream. Stand up, my sexy Dana. And what's good, authentic? Are you really are you ready? I think you meant to say for your Knicks tonight. I can't wait. I'm going to be calling the game, probably live at about 7:15. Game starts at 7:30. I can't wait. And hopefully the Knicks give me some joy in my sports life. It's been a while, but Knicks will be able to match the Giants win total tonight. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Shout out to Asia, though. Always supporting the Giants community, man.
Asia's awesome.
Yeah.
I got to meet her a couple of times, actually, at Citi Field.
Oh, word.
Yeah. JT Carroll, thank you very much, man. There is talks that a trade for Watson would include a 3-team trade and send Tua to Washington. Yeah, we heard that earlier. So apparently people were talking as if it happened. So apparently it's just a rumor, and maybe they feel like it's going to happen. That'd be crazy for me, man. And I actually, I do think Washington's a pretty good fit for Tua.
Yeah.
I really do. They got some pretty good weapons over there. The defense has been underwhelming. That has to improve, but
yeah,
that would be an interesting fit. And obviously, as a Giants fan, I hope it does not succeed, but that would be an interesting fit, with him over in Washington. And Watson going to Miami, same thing, man. Obviously, that's a better situation than Houston. So that'd be interesting. That shakes up the NFL next year for sure.
Yeah, a lot of Washington's problems on that defense are in the secondary. They're struggling with I forget his name over there, Jackson, and then Fuller is struggling with tackling. I mean, their tackling performance in this last game on Sunday was just awful. Landon Collins is Jabril Peppers Jr. can't cover nobody out there. But they offensively they have the weapons. I think Tua could get into that offense and really be a good fit. They got the running back. Antonio Gibson is a stud at running back. They also got the second running back in McKissick. And Terry McLaurin is one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. Slept on, had his first drop of the season last week. And the kid Diami Brown is looking pretty good too.
Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty decent fit for him. And Allison, thank you so much. Hey, Chris, Pettis hasn't impressed. David Sills time. Yeah, I know David Sills was like the everybody's favorite guy. That they wanted to make the team before the year started. I mean, at this point, I mean, with everybody hurt, why not see what you got with Sills? He's been on the practice squad for I think like 2 or 3 years now for the Giants. Why not?
Didn't the Giants sign a wide receiver just a couple days ago too?
Did they? I missed that if they did.
I think we signed a wide receiver just a couple days ago to the practice squad though. So I mean, hopefully we can see Sills play. He kind of reminds me of how Alex Bachman was for a couple of seasons there too. I think they cut Alex Bachman this year, but he was another fan favorite, in the offseason during preseason as well.
Yeah, I see no reason why he can't be called up on the roster right now with all the injuries that we have at the position, especially Golladay. Because if there's I'm not saying he's as good as Golladay because he's not, obviously not close, but he's that type of receiver, right? Like that 6'4" guy. So with Golladay out, I see no problem with calling him up and giving him an opportunity. I don't know if they'll do it. But
what would it hurt to maybe sit Colin Johnson for a game and bring in
Colin Johnson? Yeah, similar receiver as well. He's 6'6", but yeah, why not? At least call him up and see what he's got. Joel, man, thank you very much, man. L's from Twitter here. Great show as always. How much blame percentage-wise do you give injuries, coaching, and the players for our 1-5 record? Okay, so coaching, players, injuries. I would almost say dead even with all three. I'd probably have the coaching the highest.
Yeah.
I'd have injuries second. Then I have the players third. But I do think the players have to take responsibility. I definitely think they're a big part of it as well. I'd probably go like 45 to 50% coaching. I'd probably go 25. I'll go like 50% coaching, 30% injuries, and 20% the players.
Yeah, I'll go 40 on the coaches, 40 on the injuries, which is kind of on the coaches as well because we don't have depth, and then I'll put 20 on the players.
Yeah, I would say so we're pretty much in agreement there. And Mike, man, thank you very much, man. A GM should be able to bring in their coach and draft or sign their quarterback. Otherwise, you're not taking the job, Mike. If you're a smart GM, you're not taking the job. Right? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And Connor, man, thank you very much. Does Tua at Washington bother us? Like, they'll have a decent offense, solid defense for years to come now. They could be pretty good. Miami with Deshaun, wow. No, Connor, I'm with you, man. I just always find it interesting when certain quarterbacks go to certain situations to see how, like, I found it interesting when Darnold went to Carolina. They didn't scare me. I found it interesting when Goff went to Detroit, when Stafford went to the Rams, just to see how it plays out. But I agree with you. It's not like Tua's scaring me. I never thought Tua was this unbelievable talent. But I think he's definitely potentially an upgrade for that football team.
Yeah, like Miami's offense doesn't like have like real weapons. Jalen Waddle's been doing his thing over there. And Tua's, yeah, you're right. He's just never scared me. But the one thing that surprised me about them is when Jacoby Brissett came in the game, you didn't see any elevated real play out of him either, who showed that he could do some things when he was with the Colts. So I do think Tua could be a good fit in Washington. I'd like to see it. I don't think he's that much of an upgrade from a guy like Taylor Heineke, but I think he has the arm strength upgrade over Taylor Heineke, which that could do some things in that offense for sure with a guy like Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, and we got a couple more we got to read, and then we're going to call it a show, man. But Authentic, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out this long, man. You're freaking awesome.
Thank you for having me, man. You know, I do this, man. Like, I've been putting in work, streaming a lot lately. We did a 3-hour show yesterday. My giant overreaction on Monday was like 3.5 hours of just straight ranting, man. So yeah, I'm in the studio.
I'm definitely. I know you mentioned on your stream if it's open, I'll definitely swing by on Monday.
Yeah, let's get it, man.
Yeah, I'll definitely swing by on Monday. Jokes, man. Thank you very much, man. Other teams wouldn't give DJ more than $15 million a year, offer the same as a stopgap. No way he gets 20%. Breeze stepped up when he saw Rivers drafted. Need competition. Yeah, I mean, we're in no rush to give Daniel Jones any kind of raise, right? We still got him under the 4th year of control and the 5th year rookie option.
Yeah.
Plus the potential franchise tag. But at that point, then you're paying him elite money. It's just that on a 1-year rate. So I'm not even worried about it yet. It's something that you really start to think about at the end of next year if he's still your quarterback. But right now, it's, I guess you have to it's just projecting for the future, whether or not he's going to be worth that, because that essentially is what you have to do when you have a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
And Gideon, man, thank you very much. I never thought I'd say this. It's time to sell off before the trade deadline. It's so bad with the players' body language. McAdoo 2017, that bad. Gideon, I agree with you. The problem is, Authentic, when you look at this team, who on this team is tradable, where you're going to get a pretty good package?
Yeah, not many of them present much value. I know a lot of people been talking about Saquon Barkley, but it's hard to trade a guy who's been hurt that much.
Yeah, I mean, the one guy I've said is Bradbury, but I think you'd have to eat a large portion of his contract if I'm not mistaken. You're not getting much for Ingram. You're not getting much for Peppers. I just honestly, I don't know, man. I just honestly don't see. I just don't see value with a lot of the players on this team right now with the money that they make.
Yeah, right there. What you want at?
And Gideon, man, thank you. He says, I just read that. Oh, Pete, I'm not gonna be able to highlight it, Pete, because it's behind in my chat, man. But thank you so much, man. Phenomenal supporter of mine. He's always in all my streams. Big Knicks fan, Giants fan. Thank you so much, man, for all the support, man. I really appreciate it, man. With the $100 donation. Thank you so much, man.
Big salute to Pete one time.
He says, I just want to throw you some love. I'm not going to be watching any more games this season until this team figures out how not to be utterly pathetic. As such, I might not be in as many streams. So here's some here's some funding. Pete, man, I completely understand your mindset. And I completely understand Giants mindsets to feel that way. The team's a joke. Hopefully the Knicks give us a good season, because I know you're a Knicks fan as well, Pete. But I don't blame Giants fans for tuning out right now with the way this team's playing. Then they're not giving a good product, and they're not even giving any hope as a product. So I don't blame anybody for feeling the way that you do. MY Giants 26 says, would have loved McKinney signing if we were a contender. I think you're talking about the linebacker we picked up.
Yeah.
Here's my issue with that signing. I think we were talking about it briefly before the stream started, Authentic. Why would you wait until week 7?
Yeah, made no sense.
Martinez went down after week 3.
Yeah, they should have made that signing immediately.
Like, what are you thinking? I didn't get that. That's what I'm completely fine. I'm like, okay, McKinney's a good depth linebacker. Why wouldn't you have signed him the second Blake Martinez went down?
Yeah, and now you're sitting at 1-5. You dug a real deep hole, man. It's not looking like the Giants can salvage this season.
Yeah, man. And Giants fan says, a lot of this blame should be put on Mara. This old school approach is not working. We need to evolve, or we're going to be bad for a long time. Yeah, I mean, we've been saying it all stream, but of course, I think the biggest problem, and I've said it for 3 years since my last 3 years on YouTube, is Mara. And we will not improve unless he, as an individual, evolves, because he's not going anywhere. I promise you that. But yeah, he needs to evolve, and I think he needs to think outside the box and not be in like his comfort zone, which is the way I think he's been as an owner for a long time. And I think his biggest weakness, Authentic, is that he's, and I love loyalty. Like, I'm as loyal. I try to be as loyal as they come. I love loyalty. I think it's
Yeah.
great to be loyal, but I think his biggest fault is at times, at least, he's loyal to a fault.
Yeah, and that's what I'm questioning about the super chat here is when speaking on the old school approach, are we talking about the way that he's been hiring, or are we talking about the product that's on the field? Because to me, the product that's on the field that's not the old school approach. Not having the hogs, not having people in the trenches, not having a 2 running back system, that would be an old school approach for real. And on the field, yeah, they haven't been playing old school ball, but maybe with the hiring and the way they've been keeping everything kind of in house, that maybe he's speaking to that too as well.
Yeah. But to me, it's the loyalty thing for him. I think he thinks too much, like in terms of people that he's been with in the organization. He gives them the GM jobs, and Eli
Yeah,
Manning. Everybody always talks about that they should have rebuilt.
yeah.
I just think keeping Jerry Reese when he should have fired him
Jason
with Tom
Garrett,
Coughlin. What is that? Yeah, Jason Garrett.
Jason
Yeah,
Garrett, yeah,
I think at times he's just like too loyal to a fault.
yeah,
And Rolly, man, thank you very much. I keep telling you guys we need to get rid of Dave Gettleman and the scouting department. Bring in a young outside mind with young group of scouts. I agree, Rolly. I
yeah.
agree.
100. Shout out
There's
to
no doubt
Roby
about
too.
it. I agree. I'm completely on board with that at this point. I just don't know if they're going to do it, but
Yeah,
I think they need to shake it up. And Ray, man, thank you so much. Another great supporter of the channel, man. He says Garrett leaves, Dallas offense gets better. Garrett comes here, offense gets worse. Coincidence?
yeah.
Um,
The first part for sure.
yeah,
And we saw flashes of Kellen Moore that first season where you knew he was going to be a play caller to keep your eye on. But as far as our offense, I mean, there was only one position to get worse on offense. We were 31st last season, and the offense kind of looks a little better, especially if you take away that last game. But
yeah.
offense
Last
kind of looks better, but the injuries are definitely kicking our butt here, man. Yeah, Garrett, to me, of everybody on the coaching staff, has been probably the better coach on the coaching staff, which is a disgrace right now. I mean, Patrick Graham's defense
Patrick Graham's been worse than him.
it's
not
been
even close.
awful. And
Yeah.
Joe Judge just seems lost because he doesn't have a special characteristic for either side of the ball to me. So it's like a guy who's up there just trying to manage the clock, and he's not good at that.
Yeah. To me, Graham has been by far, and I can't believe I'm saying that,
Yeah,
the worst of the 2 coordinators this year. The thing with Kellen Moore, and this is just from an outsider looking at it, I don't watch every Dallas game. When he first took that job, I actually thought the Cowboys were ass backwards. I thought they were doing things counterproductive in terms of the way that they should operate their offense based off the offense was built. And it seems like this year, Kellen Moore's finally figured it out that they have to get back to what made Dallas football successful, which is a balanced approach, and they're running the ball
yeah,
a lot more. But I think Kellen Moore maybe has evolved as a play caller this year for the Dallas Cowboys. But there's no doubt about it. I mean, you talk to any Cowboys fan, they weren't head over heels in love with Jason Garrett there. They couldn't wait to get him
right.
out of there. He got relieved of play calling duties. I don't know when, but at some point when he was a head coach, while he was there, obviously he did a good job when he had the right pieces there. But I think that kind of speaks about, the type of offensive coordinator is. Like, we talk about quarterbacks and being able to overcome deficiencies on their roster and what that makes them a franchise quarterback. You could say the same thing about offensive coordinators, right? Like, Garrett has proven when he's given quarterback heaven that he could be a very good offensive play caller.
Right.
The Cowboys routinely had a top 5 offense, but he's also proven when he does not have ideal circumstances that he cannot have a very good offense. So, you look at a lot of other coaches that don't have ideal circumstances, they could still have a pretty good offense. Hell, Pat Shermer with the Giants had at least a decent offense when he had really bad circumstances. So I think that speaks about him as a coordinator. Well, yes, when he does have what he needs, he could be successful. But I think part of what makes you a great coach and great coordinator is when you don't have everything that you need and being able to make the most out of the situation.
Yeah, and he's had some really good rosters, some really good teams over there. And I think that the comparison you made to a franchise quarterback is spot on. It's just like Daniel Jones. It's like, you're good. Jason Garrett's been solid his whole tenure as a Dallas Cowboy head coach. They only had one losing season under Jason Garrett, and that was when the quarterback got hurt. So, but he never really took them over the top. He was never that kind of coach that took a team that was, 8-8, 9-7 and really make a run in the playoffs. I mean, we're talking about a team that really they took forever to win their first playoff game. And haven't been back to a bowl since, I was like 10 years old.
Yeah, for sure, man. I wish we could do this for another 20 hours because I had so much fun
Yeah, it was
um,
a good time, man.
getting to talk to you and getting to talk to everybody in the chat, even though we're not talking about a very fun topic right now, with how bad this organization is. But I think, like, for me at least, it helps me like get through these times when I could voice my opinion and get to talk to others and spin off their ideas. And I always love talking to you because or watching your content, because when I watch you, it's like I feel like we're kind of synced up in terms of our overall mindset. Like, we're not a guy that wants to come out here and just absolutely destroy and act like the world's on fire, even though we in our hearts we feel like, yeah, drastic changes are needed. But at the same time, you want to try to like think about, like, I don't know, like potential solutions on how to fix this mess.
Yeah.
And I always have a blast talking to you, and I had an absolute blast talking to everybody in the chat. Appreciate each and every one of you guys, and I just hope we're able to get through these dark, dark, dark times. I see a lot of people talking about the Knicks. Yeah, I'm gonna be live at like 7:15 for the Knicks game. Can't wait for that. But authentic man, I just can't say thank you so enough for coming on. You did a fantastic job.
Nah, thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing the platform, man. You know, I look up to you as being the top Giants content creator out there. Been riding with you since day one, pretty much, man. We go back mad years. It was awesome to get to meet you down at the Fan Fest and hang out for a grip. And in person, you're the same person that I've come to like on YouTube and love supporting your streams, man. Every time you have me on your show, your chat is a blast, man. Everybody's got different opinions. I just love how everybody comes with different angles, man. And nobody's really disrespectful in these chats. I'm always digging the vibe of the Giants community. I think we got one of the most tight-knit communities out there of any fan base for real. And these dark times, man, they're gonna make the good times even better, man. I can't wait to be a content creator on YouTube when we're actually winning games. That's gonna be the day, man. And again, man, I appreciate you just for having me on the platform. If y'all want to check me out, it's Authentic in the Beard, the way I spell it, AWTHENTIK. I do content Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Always a couple hours of streaming, man. Definitely dedicated to this team. I'm a fan first and a content creator second. So y'all know what it is. I'm just gonna give you my fan perspective. I'm not one of these people out here trying to preach like I'm a GM or trying to preach like I'm a head coach. I just try to give my opinions on the game and how I see it and how I see it fit, man. And getting to chop it up with you today was a blast, man. I hope we could do this again. Maybe you could pull up to my show on Monday, man, when we
I'll be there.
lose another game on Sunday.
I'll definitely be there, man. Definitely be there. And I'm going to read a couple more of these and we're going to close it out. German Brother says, thank you very much. What's up, brother? I know I wasn't active for much, but still bleed Giants blue. Hope you're well. I honestly say let's build it up new with our Giants around a couple of good guys and go Knicks. German Brother, man, thank you so much for popping in, man. You've been a member of mine forever, man. I can't say thank you enough for all the support you show on the channel. Gotten an opportunity to talk to you, actually. You came on via video chat a couple of times. Know you're a huge Knicks fan as well. I'll be calling the game in about an hour and a half. I'll be live for that, and hopefully you're able to swing by. I know it's late over there for you, but thank you so much for popping in, man, and hopefully the Knicks give us something to be excited about. Jay Rada, man, thank you very much. What is the most important position on a football team? Well, obviously quarterback, but after quarterback, I think that's where the discussion becomes interesting. For me, it's left tackle. You could say edge. You could say, all right, I'll give my areas of importance. It's quarterback. It's left tackle. It's, for me, I think a lockdown corner is like the third most important position on a football team. And then I'll go edge rusher. I think those are the four most important spots. I'll go quarterback 1, left tackle 2. I'm talking like Darrelle Revis type lockdown corner 3.
Yeah.
And edge rusher 4. That would be my order.
I'm right there with you. I would maybe replace the edge rusher with the middle linebacker, because having a solid quarterback for your defense like that, Antonio Pierce vibes, a guy who can really lead men. That's why I really like Logan Ryan, actually, because I think he does that in the secondary. But having that player be your middle linebacker, the guy who's going out there making the most hits, making the most tackles, and leading your defense, I think that's very important too. But yeah, edge rushers right up there for me too.
Yeah, coverage linebackers would probably be 5 for me,
Yep.
especially in today's modern day NFL. Like you need a guy in the middle that could do multiple things, not just a traditional run stuffer like Zach Thomas used to be. Like a guy that could actually drop back in coverage and do different things for your defense. And Kelvin, man, thank you very much. My beef with Judge, too much emphasis on special teams. Draft picks, that's a great point. That is a great point that we haven't brought. Like, he keeps Nate Ebner. He traded for what's his name? The guy from the Texans. I forgot his name. Crossan. I think it is Keon Crossan. They gave up a 6th round.
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm.
Like guys that are like, they drafted Brightwell in the 6th round because they thought he could be a special teams contributor. That is a great point, Kelvin. And the saddest thing about it, our special teams isn't even good.
It's not. Keeping CJ Board on the roster because he's a good special teams player as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kelvin, man. Good call by you. Draft pick solely for special teams. Cam Brightwell. Yeah, I just said it. And two fullbacks are, two fullbacks. A lot of teams don't even have one fullback. We have two because of special teams. And the special teams are not even good.
Yeah. I hated how we had Penny as the second running back out there too when Saquon Barkley gets hurt. I can't stand that.
That's a great point, man. Good call by you, Kelvin, man. But yeah, guys, we're gonna close this out. I can't say thank you enough. Thank you to Authentic for coming on. I'll definitely have some Giant. I'm gonna be live. I think probably Saturday with Bad though, because I looked at the schedules and I think Lakers and Knicks are both off Saturday. So I'll be live Saturday for that. Sunday, of course, the game, and then Monday I'll be on Authentics. But thank you again, Authentic, for coming on. Thank you to everybody for all the support you guys always show. And let's go Knicks. Have a good night, everybody. Well, good day, everybody. I'll see you hopefully some of you guys tonight for the game.
Peace, y'all.